developing your 24-month focused action plan priorities. I'm going to ask each of you to share your up to top 5 priorities you brought into the room after listening to the feedback we discussed this morning, as well as all of the conversations you have with your constituents all the time. After you've each shared, we'll allow you to ask each other questions to make sure you understand what each other means by these different priorities. I'll also allow the staff to ask questions in case they're not quite sure what some of these things mean. After we've done that, we'll take a after lunch quick break. We're going to start organizing your ideas. I am expecting that you have a lot of shared priorities as well as some divergent priorities. So we'll start grouping the shared priorities together. We will ask you to dot vote your highest priorities at that time, and then the ones that elevate to the higher priorities will go into deeper discussions of what would that look like to succeed in that area in the next 24 months? What do you think could be accomplished, or what would you hope could be accomplished in the next 24 months? And then the staff, starting tomorrow, will take what you define as your priorities. They'll look at what they can do. They'll solicit some community input on it, and they'll develop a 24-month focused action plan so that they can then use that with all the infrastructure Deputy Manager Kroski talked about this morning to make sure that they can be advancing your priorities and showing progress. So that's our plan for this afternoon. With that, I'm going to ask you to start by sharing your priorities. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to share your 5 priorities, and would welcome anyone to volunteer to go first.
Hutch. Get it out of the way. Public safety, then all employees under that. I think I've said enough. I believe in that. Next would be infrastructure, overall health of the city, flooding, bridges, anything that's going to keep our city as good as it is right now or better. And I think we do a pretty good job of that. With that, I've already spoken again about the housing. As you can see, I did try to pay attention to what you asked us. The housing and the mid-level prices there are where I think we need to put our focus, not to necessarily stop with the others, but put some focus. And why can't we have it all? You know what I mean? Let's do all 3 levels of housing. And with that, I've already said, is to work with the trusted developers to make it happen. That work is work for them. I think they'd be happy for it. So that to me is important. Homelessness is something that I've been working on since the 90s. So I believe in it. I don't think they should be looked down upon. I think we should try to do the best we can to help them. Mental health issues. Yes, some of them have their problems with addiction and everything else, and that makes things even harder. But by the same stance, that's where we should put some of our funding, because I do think it shows being a caring society in a top-level city, you need to care for everyone in it. So that's important to me. And then lastly, I didn't just put schools, I put education. I think as we're seeing, it's a broader picture of what is needed there across the board. All things education, whether it's buildings or the people or special programs or whatever we're doing it. But I also want to say about that is we do have a whole nother entity that helps take care of schools and education, right? That's the school board, and they're working with their own set of leaders as well. They're coming under some fire right now, but as a whole, I think they are at the top of the heap as well. And so I don't know that we have to put as much effort there. We need to take care of our part of the funding and look at it. And we have, as the vice mayor and everybody else, we have some people that have a little more experience with it. So we need to pay attention to it. but I think the other 4 are more our focus, and then we assist where needed and warranted with the education. Thanks.
Perfect, thank you.
Nice job, Hutch. Stacy?
Thank you. Let's see. I'll go to the ones that have already been covered. Affordable housing. I think I spoke to that earlier. I truly believe that's high. Then the infrastructure that we need to improve, modernize our infrastructure, that includes the stormwater, just like Hutch just said. But then I have more higher paying jobs. A lot of what we're talking about as far as the demographics and us getting older, it's not that, well, we are aging, but our young people are migrating out of the city. And it's because they can't afford to live here and the jobs that they're seeking aren't available. So we need to look at, and also with that, the burden that's on homeowners with the taxes, which is another one. So if we had an influx of more higher paying jobs, more industry, that would reduce the burden on the homeowners. It would give us the ability to have more affordable housing and keep our younger people here. And then the last on my list is maintain our city services. We have a first-class city. We offer first-class city services. People are, by and large, overwhelmingly happy with what the city has to offer, and we need to find ways to keep up that level of service.
Thank you.
Okay. Michael, did you have your hand up?
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. One of my priorities is safety, safe neighborhoods, schools, workplaces, and public spaces. For me, that includes the establishment of LEDA and ultimately ensuring that those individuals and receive the resources they need to do their job and the compensation. So much like Councilmember Hutchison, I would like to provide an addendum to the safety that extends to all city employees, that they have the tools that they need, the compensation they deserve, and the support that they need from council and our community to continue providing the excellent services they do. But we know that a top priority for our community is safety, and without that, we can do nothing else. With our schools, they should be well-resourced, high-performing, and provide educational excellence. Some of the things that I often hear when we have conversations about schools relates to compensation and benefits. And frankly, I'd like to hear a little bit more about student achievement and performance in addition to the other conversations we have about compensation and benefit, and think about our educational system more holistically than just the needs of the staff. We need to prioritize the needs of the students and make sure we continue to have a high-performing school division, which we do. Job opportunities, economic mobility, and prosperity. I think I'll defer to my previous comments on, which were exhaustive on those topics. Low taxes, housing affordability, and just general affordability is a top priority. And I will include flood protection, especially for District 3, that was most substantially impacted by Hurricane Matthew in 2016. And I wish I had another 5. If we can have more dots, can we have more of these? All right.
Thank you.
Okay, Worth.
Thank you, Mayor Dyer. And these priorities are the same for the most part as the other councilman members have said. And I wish I had some more sheets as well, but I agree. Public safety is going to be a common thread, and that's what I hear from the public the most. So public safety, let's talk about that. Equipment and technology, which we have made great advances in investments as per requested by our leaders. And by the way, public safety is not just police, it's fire, EMS, all areas of it. So equipment, technology, as well as salary and benefits. That also makes our city more affordable. If you have higher paying public safety staff. Public education, as already stated by Council Member Bellucci. Technology and equipment, I hear that, as well as modernizing schools. We are behind now, and if we don't do anything soon, we're going to become even more behind, further behind, and that's, some of our schools are very nice, a lot of our schools are not very nice, and that's really a matter of equity, much less investment in our schools. And of course, teacher salaries and benefits, which is an issue these days in terms of medical benefits for teachers. I know we knew that when we passed the budget, but that's, again, back to affordability. Higher paying jobs helps pay higher mortgages. As already stated, more and higher paying jobs and the inventory in which to obtain those higher paying jobs. That inventory means new office buildings, new industrial buildings, new retail projects throughout the city. That does raise the 14% of our real estate tax. We want to raise that closer. If we can get it even come close to 20%, but I'll take 15 or 16%. But that also attracts young people, retains young people, retains our existing businesses, and also helps our tax base. Here's something a little different that I do strongly believe in. I think this will resonate. Better local internal transportation. That includes, of course, VB Trail, so trails, not just roads, trails, microtransit, employee transportation. So that's a big title, a lot of infrastructure, but that is a priority. And here's one, I'm going to phrase it a different way than Councilmember Bellucci said, not increasing the real estate tax. This is goals, right? I know that's going to, sorry folks, that's an aspiration, and we'll see where it goes, or any other local taxes, and perhaps reducing the meals tax to 5% from 6%. It's not fair that we as a government, state and local, charge 12%, 6 and 6, 6 for state, 6 and local, 12% on one business, restaurants, when the state sales tax on other things is 6%. I voted for the budget. I understand. I'm sorry, but I think the restaurants are being unfairly taxed. Thank you.
Okay, Barbara?
I say to Mr. Brennan, I told you so. I voted against that meal tax increase for the very reason. My first priority is that we've got the trust and confidence of our citizens. If we don't have the trust and the confidence of our citizens, we cannot do anything. And unfortunately, I hear an awful lot. It doesn't matter if we come down and talk and what we say, they've got their minds made up, they're not going to pay any attention to us. And I look in this resident survey and I see very low the opportunity for resident participation in city policy development and decision-making. We might say that we're doing it, but if the perception is that we aren't, then that's what it is. And I think we really have to work on making sure the government or our citizens trust the city council and have confidence in us. And I don't think we're probably as high up with those things as we need to be. A second priority, of course, is safety. And I particularly am concerned about the shooting. Every morning when you cut on the radio or the television, you say, well, I wonder how many shootings there were last night and how many there were in Virginia Beach. We didn't used to have shootings. That didn't happen here. But there's something that's gotten into our culture that everybody's got to have a gun, and this shooting business has just gotten out of hand. I don't know why, but somehow or other, we've got to try to come up with some way to deal with this. One is too many. We just shouldn't be having it at all. And it's particularly a concern to me that so much involves our youth, because a lot of the shooting is done by juveniles, And there seems to be this perception that everybody's got to have a gun. And so I think we really need to concentrate on what we make available for our youth. And as I talk about the ITA with recreation, that can be one of the ways that we can do this. But if there's a void, something's going to fill it. And I'm afraid that this violence and this shooting aspect is what is filling the void with our youth. And I think we have to be just very much concerned and make sure that we're offering whatever we can, particularly to our youth, to make sure that this perception doesn't go on. It's not right, and we've got to do something about it. And that leads me to the completion of the implementation plan for recreation and preservation of the ITA. Because if we do that, that's going to touch these other topics that I've got, and one of them will be the youth. I just see this opportunity for having all of this sports activity with teams and team building as a great opportunity for our youth to help fill that void that they need to have something to do with their time rather than just hanging out and waiting for something to happen. Let's let them be a part of all of these things and make sure that we provide these activities if we're going to do it with sports, not only just for sports tourism, but sports for our people too, particularly our youth. It still gives me chills every time I think about those two boys that saved that drowning man last winter. And when they were asked, how did you know exactly what you needed to do? And they said, our wrestling coach. So with youth and team building and sports, it's far more than what they're getting out of the sporting activity.
Barbara, you have 1 minute to wrap up.
Okay. That's an important one to me. The environmental appreciation, flooding, soil and land conditions, marsh restoration, tree mitigation, sea level rise, all of these things that we need to be concerned about as far as the special environment that Virginia Beach has that makes us what we are. And then the quality of life for our citizens. I want us to make sure we're constantly reviewing our services to assure that we're meeting the needs of our varied demographics in all of our departments to make sure we're not overlooking something that our particular people need.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have anybody else on this side here? We're good? Okay, Jennifer?
All right, so all similar. I think across the city, flooding, workforce, high wage jobs, and maintain our quality education system. And then for the city, but specific to District 10, and similar to what Ms. Henley was saying, as part of public safety and youth development activities for youth, that's another affordability issue. If it's camps, if it's sports, if it's something and that costs money and parents can't pay those fees, what opportunities do kids have to do something constructive? So, so activities for youth, and particularly for housing access and affordability. Something unique to District 10 is how many of our housing communities are planned communities, so have HOAs or condos, and that is another element of affordability where it's balancing what the city's responsible for, what the HOA is responsible for, and for a lot of those residents, both are increasing. So when thinking about developments and what kind of development we're offering and how affordable is it, not just with city services, but if they're private, if they're renting, if they're HOAs, that we should weigh all of those things to ensure people have access to stable homes and home ownership if they choose to. Just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cash?
Thank you. Being in this seat for a little over 8 months, I've been out in the community, and so these are real live data taken by my feet on the ground, and so not by a computer, this is actually being there in person. One of those that we that I would love to see us focus more on is senior services. On Auburn Drive, College Park area, I have over 500 seniors and different buildings, but in that block, over 500 seniors. And what's lacking is transportation, right? And so I see them catching the bus, where it could be dangerous. I'm sitting out there in my car on a Tuesday making sure that they catch the bus, but I can't be there everywhere. So we've got a wonderful human service, and I was grateful to have connected with Human Services today. So, and I'm hoping to get some direction from staff on that angle. Next, food at senior services. Some of them are living on their retirement checks, Social Security, and Medicaid. And with that being said, they've got activity coordinators who are going to the food pantries to pick up food so they can make their week's worth of food last. So that's something that's very important. And then dental for senior services. Next, sports tourism. Virginia Beach is known to be sports tourism. That's us. But under that category is youth sports, right? And so we've got traveling teams that play at the Sportsplex. We've got teams that are not connected with the recreation center that are West Kempsville. I guess football used to be a part, but that structure needs to be improved a little bit more because the chain of command isn't there like it used to be. And again, I'm new on council, but I'm out there, boots on the ground, and I can tell you this, that we've got a rec center, then we've got West Kempsville, we've got youth leagues, we've got so many different, we need to tighten that up because the chain of command there is lacking. But Director Kirschman, you're great, and your team is great. I'm not saying that about you. I'm just saying that we need to pull together. I noticed that we now have girls flag football on the rise. Well, I went out there to visit the girls flag football, and they had no one there watching them. Yet these girls are out there competing, and I was so proud, and I'm cheering. So we need a little more marketing for our women in sports, our girls in sports. Next, trade schools. Certifications are everything for me. Okay.
You're good. 1 minute.
Certifications, I got 1 minute. Okay. I can do this. So certification, yeah, and yes, I will. Certifications are everything. And I think we need to focus on a little bit more, in my opinion, our trade schools. From middle school, high school, VOTEC, a little more emphasis on trade schools, marketing there. And then for Recreation Center District 7, looking at the faith way for them to have a place of connection and community. So I'm looking at talking with some of the pastors and seeing if they would like to have a multi-use center because it's too hard for us to build one in District 7. And then lastly, food pantry. We need to make sure that our food pantries are stocked with the federal cuts that are happening. We need to ensure that we, Virginia Beach, have vital food pantries. And I've got one.
Appreciate it.
Reset.
Josh?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My first one is continued progress on roads and infrastructure and the CIP backlog. I think that's part of keeping our promises, and you know, we've got obviously aging infrastructure, and I commend the council, including, you know, everybody, even if we didn't want to vote for the budget or certain aspects of it, that meals tax was not alone in creating the major projects fund. It came alongside the ARP and the TIF in Town Center and open space, and And it created a really important tool for us to get through some of this backlog. And I keep hearing that we are the highest meals tax in, I don't know, the region, the state, the country. Norfolk's meals tax is 13.5% combined. And we're not the highest meals tax in the country. So I wanted to at least address that since it had been said twice. That doesn't mean I'm not sympathetic to our restaurant owners. Next is preserving and protecting our coastal environment. Planting trees, I think we can do a lot of that. I mean, we've got money for it, and we're doing it. And we can partner with nonprofit organizations to help us leverage our ability to plant trees on public and hopefully private property. We've heard things like tree preservation easements and things. I'd love to get that task force back together that looked at tree canopy that you had put together, Ms. Hunley. And, just doing stuff like what we did a couple weeks ago with, reiterating our opposition to offshore drilling off Virginia's coast. So all of those things are things that we can do to protect our environment, attracting young talent and new business, diversifying our revenue stream, things that other people have talked around on the table. There's lots of different pieces to that. Education is so many things, but it's also an economic development, and people generator, opportunity generator, housing, investments in placemaking, continued investments in placemaking, making our community an exciting one for both residents and visitors, prioritizing tourism investments, because we've got lots of that coming at us and choices to make, cultural and arts investments like we've been making, Virginia Beach Trail, Rudy Park, Atlantic Park. All of those things are part of this attracting young people and growing our business tax revenue. Land use, that is my next one, and there's a whole bunch in that. I mean, we're obviously almost through the comp plan update. I'm glad to know that next up will be a zoning ordinance update, reaffirm commitment to our strategic growth areas, and if we want to see people building things in places that don't disturb neighborhoods and don't upset the environment, then we got to find ways to incentivize people to do that. Because obviously right now the market, if left to its own, isn't necessarily producing or hasn't produced the results we want to see. Lastly, neighborhood and traffic safety and connectivity. So those are things that are, soft spots for me, as you all know, being representing an older part of our city where we don't have the things like, crosswalks and sidewalks and traffic signals and pedestrian refuges. So those are all important to me.
Okay, thank you. Amelia?
Thank you. On my list, I have education and comparable job skill sets. It's important because what we did many years ago has changed. So we need to have that type of skill sets so those coming for jobs will be able to get something that is able to maintain them. Addressing technical needs, investing in our workforce development. I've put what we've already done with SWAM, the Small Women and Minority Business, to continue that. And one thing I noticed, I had my District 4 community meeting last night, and we had President Scott Miller from Virginia Wesleyan University. He keeps calling it Virginia Beach University because of certain things that they're doing with our police. He has a new program with the health sciences. Those are all job skills. Even they're doing something with those who are coming out of incarceration and also offering more free courses, even on Saturdays, just for the community. So that was exciting to hear. So education is key, not just for the K through 12, but beyond. My second I have is flood protection, storm management, and to do with safety. Because I remember where we had that big flood in Rosemont and so forth, and it was terrible. but we have done a lot to put up the gateways to, address that. So we're on the right track. The third I have is affordable housing, seniors, the workforce, our new graduates, so they don't go somewhere else. And this can also be a strong way for the homeless, because we have a large veteran population. And you will see a lot of veterans out there, or at least they're wearing some of the veteran paraphernalia, needing housing. So we're addressing that. I'm glad we have the Housing Advisory and all of that. And that also leads right into mental health. So that all comes under affordable housing. My third is communication, especially with our citizens. That is important. We're doing a pretty good job at it, but there's still a need. A lot of people just need that extra. And one little thing I put along here, from our mom, she used to say, don't hang your hat where you cannot reach it. I'm sure some of you have heard that. Okay, so I put down managing our resources during this age of inflationary costs. We need to look at that. We want everything, but we are not a Christmas box. We have to look at how we manage what we have. And the last is adequate infrastructure sustainability, especially for mobility, transportation. HRT is coming up with their system optimization. And even last night, some people said, we have problems getting from here to there. And I told them about the microtransit. So how we can look at this and how we can address through our Hampton Roads Transit and ourselves what we can do for transportation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rosemary.
Well, this is really great, and everybody's comments are very well taken, and it just shows that to be a great city, all of these things are important. They're all connected. You can't just isolate them. And so these are not any order of importance, but one is the economic development that we talked about with why we needed the Innovation Park, because we're going to need it for bringing in jobs. And by doing that, it's going to help keep our taxes down by broadening our tax base. So economic development is going to be very important. Cutting taxes and making our city more affordable, which ties in with the affordable housing and to, what did I say, include? Yes, include affordable housing. So we need to make it as affordable as we can, but keeping the quality of life that we have. Quality education, that's pre-K through higher ed. Another place where they get education is through childcare. And childcare is part of that, making affordability. People are having fewer children because the cost and availability of childcare. And it's keeping also people from going into the workforce because they don't have someone to take care of their children. So childcare has gotten extremely expensive, and it's really necessary. I'd like to see us get a new Princess Anne High School and more VOTEC opportunities. Public safety and our employees, always important. We want the best employees, and we want them to make sure they're well compensated and that they have the very good equipment that they need to do the job, and pursue LEDA. And tourism. Tourism is a very important leg of our economic stool, and it helps keep our taxes low. We want welcoming, family-friendly, and we want activity options, and want it to be a very inviting beach, places that people want to go, that's clean, things to do, and people say, I want to go back there next year.
Okay, thank you. That's all very great stuff. A couple of mine just are redundant with a lot of things. Affordable housing and taking care of our homeless, aging infrastructure, and our aging population has been pretty much well-defined. I do have a little bit of a new one, and that is dealing with unfunded and underfunded mandates and improving, communication with Richmond. As we determined, around 30 cents of our 97.5 cents is from unfunded or underfunded mandates. And I just think, we're talking about communications in general. But once again, working in collaborative efforts with our federal and state partners, I think are going to be essential. And if I could just make a comment on, the communication, I think a challenge that our communication department has, or we have as a city, is that, through generations, everybody's got different ways of communicating. The silver tsunami, like myself, communicate a lot, different than the Gen Zs in terms of trying to get out the information, that's needed. And if you look at the broad spectrum of information we get from legacy media, social media, AI and everything, I'll tell you what, it's pretty confusing out there. But two other things I want to make, and they were kind of touched on it. One is maintaining our quality of life. We get kudos for being a great city to live in, one of the tops in the country. And the idea is not to sit on our laurels at all, but to make sure that we maintain this. And we get this from various people. Our Navy loves us. And last year, the Supreme Commander of NATO came to my office and introduced himself. And I made a comment about, how many people from NATO live in Virginia Beach. And he says, oh, my goodness, it came down to a quality of life. And when people come here for 4 years, they want your good schools. But once again, we have to, as we try to balance all of our CIP needs and everything, we have to, people expect and deserve the quality of life. And the final other thing I'm bringing up is the thing about, what Monica was talking before, with the HOPE initiative, helping our people to excel. One of our strong points of Virginia Beach is that we're considered the most caring community. And a lot of things, what a lot of people said here, is making sure that people that need help, that need mental health, that need physical health, that need mentoring, that need people getting into jobs and things of that nature so they can have a sustainable future. So, but once again, I think the quality of life and at the same time helping our people excel, give them the pathway to success. And I think that we do that very well. We're going to do it better. And that's what defines us as Virginia Beach.
Thank you. As you all were talking, I started grouping some things. We'll come back to the grouping, but I just want to kind of recap how I've grouped it and then open it up for you all to ask a few questions of each other in case you're not quite sure what someone meant when they were sharing one of their priorities. So there were several comments about economic development, workforce development, and jobs and economic mobility. So attracting young talent and new businesses. Some of the education comments, I think, overlap with K-12 education. Right now, I've got them separate. That's how I was hearing it, but I definitely heard overlap. So over here, we've got several economic development, jobs, workforce development, attracting businesses. Since I just said education, there were several comments about maintaining that high-quality education. Several comments about low taxes, reducing the tax burden, and tying that to making Virginia Beach affordable. I'll just tie the affordability. Then here, there were several specifically about affordable housing and focusing there. And then some tying the conversation about affordable housing to homelessness. Public safety, what came up from a lot of people, slightly different definitions or emphasis about public safety, but broad public safety interest. Activities for youth, sports tourism, youth sports, recreation center, also a senior center. I'm including seniors and youth, like serving the ends of the spectrum of of your constituents. Completing the implementation for recreation and preservation of the ITA and land use issues seem related in my mind if I'm trying to group things. Infrastructure, improving your infrastructure, continue progress on roads and your CIP backlog, several comments about flooding and flood protection, environmental appreciation, and protecting our coastal environment. Mentioned affordable housing. Here, a few comments about transportation, internal transportation, neighborhood traffic safety, so different comments there. Tourism, being a welcoming, family-friendly place. There were other mentions of tourism, but this was the only one that said that only. So it came up more than once, even though there's only one there. Trust and confidence of our citizens and communication with our citizens about what we're doing and the cost of business. Talked about education. And then several about maintaining city services, reviewing our services to make sure we're meeting our needs, quality of life, food pantry, unfunded mandates, and improving communication with Richmond. I'm going to put sort of as a tangent to tax burden. Anything? And the aging population infrastructure, I think, can go there. So that's maybe looks like a mess, but starting, you had a lot of similarities in what you were talking about. Any questions of each other of what you meant by different?
Any questions or comments about, what we were doing here? I think there's a lot of alignment here. And, once again, I think that comes from our working relationship that we have. Any comments at all? Good job.
Okay, I'm going to actually let you take a quick break to let lunch out, and we'll be back in 10 minutes.
So people want that bread pudding again. I think.
Okay, so it's a short break. It's a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 1:28. About your priorities. Pre-break, I had already started grouping them. We consulted with staff a little, trying to group these a little more. Knowing that what you do today is a draft, it's not a final vote, but you're expressing agreement with the direction that you want staff to start building out the 24-month focused action plan. I am going to have you put some dots up, but before we do that, I'll tell you, first of all, you're getting 6 dots total. Right now, I've got 13 big yellow circles. So the big yellow circles are the kind of clusters of ideas. So want to, before I ask you to put some dots up to show what your individual and collective priorities are leaning toward, to make sure we're comfortable with these groupings. There's some things where you all talked about things that overlap and connect. So starting over here again, economic development and jobs and workforce development as a potential priority area. Tax and government affordability, including paying attention to the level of taxes, as well as looking at the services we provide to make sure we're providing services that our residents need and at a cost that is affordable, and paying attention to the state and federal unfunded mandates, all categorized here. Public safety, again, there's lots that you mentioned about public safety. Once we do our dots, we'll dig into what that looks like for each of you. We regrouped several things into services based on the changing demographics. You saw the great presentation last week and the recap this week of the changing demographics. So things for youth, things for our seniors, and overall quality of life for our residents, maintaining the quality of life, providing the different services that our folks need, helping our people excel, all based in these services based on the demographics. Investing in our infrastructure, several ideas related to infrastructure, addressing flooding and the environment, affordable housing, and tied to affordable housing is the homelessness. Several mobility, transit, transportation, and trails as a broad category, tourism, resident engagement and relations, and I can see this, building off of serving based on demographics. What are our residents asking for? How do we continue to engage and relate with our residents to increase trust? Education, and then I wasn't sure whether or not to combine some of the land use and ITA decisions and moving forward. So, completing the recreation and preservation of the ITA related to land use, but might be a different category. So looking at kind of these groupings, what are some questions, concerns, comments you have? Councilman Remick.
Thank you, Julie. I would just ask council if you would consider putting the tourism, because right now it's kind of lonely up there. It's really, really important to our city. There are four legs to our economy, and our city tourism really is the top. We could put tourism over with economic development, jobs, and workforce. Because we only had 5 categories, a lot of, but that's really important. And it was not one of mine, but it was really kind of met in mind with economic development. Thank you.
That, since I grouped that, it makes sense to me.
I think that would be okay. Anybody object?
No, I was going to say I would support, to me, it almost feels like part of our infrastructure. I know a lot of people wouldn't look at it that way, but I was thinking the boardwalk, all the stuff that goes with it when I was talking about that.
Could I mention this, that coming out of COVID, we were able to get together with a lot of folks and get the beaches open when a lot of beaches weren't open. And I think they did some economic impact analysis over the couple of years after that. And I think there was a figure I remember, that the economic impact after the first year of COVID was something like $3.6 billion of economic. That saved $1,700 on every homeowner's insurance. So I think, that underscores your thought. Yeah.
On the real estate taxes.
Yeah, real estate.
$800.
Councilmember Cummings?
Okay, I just want a question for clarification. Are we supposed to be looking at this from a baseline, or from what do we need to concentrate on taking to the next level or improving? Because if you're looking at it from a baseline, I would say, obviously, to me, public safety and education would be 1 and 1A. But I think we have awesome public safety, and I think we have incredible schools. And I think that there are other things we need to try to bring to the next level versus trying to elevate those that are already at a high level. So how are we supposed to be looking at this?
Feel free.
Councilmember Cummings, I'm excited about that question, and I think that matters. I think we will actually flesh it out a lot in the next section when Julie looks at what does success look like over the next 24 months. I think I said it last time because Councilmember Bellucci had a similar question at the end of the day. We have a lot of things that we gave you all. I'm not sure we accomplished anything. I don't know if you remember that comment that you made, but my response to that then is the same as now. Whatever ends up in the Focus Action Plan, they all won't get the same level of attention, right? It'll depend on how much progress you want to see when we're here 24 months from today. So for education, you might say success looks like us maintaining that, or in addition to progress on Princeton Sand High School. But for one of these other categories, you might have something more ambitious of what success looks like. So when we get to that next section, that's where we're listening to you all now and taking notes. But once we get to the section of what does success look like, that's when we can tither out like how much effort you want for a particular goal. One might be maintaining, the other might be something we're not doing at all, and you want us to bring you something new, something innovative. So, yeah, I would say that's where we're going to get to that.
Okay, Josh?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just under the affordability and tax bucket, I know we've talked for several years around the table about the real estate tax, and we've also talked about other taxes that we have that we impose on our citizens that aren't necessarily aren't the real estate tax, but when we talk about cutting taxes, I know there's a lot of focus on the real estate tax, and rightly so, because that's what most people pay. But I would just renew the call that we, look for other tax revenues that if we were to cut them, they impact families and single mothers and people who might not own real estate. And a lot of the people, some people that own real estate, they own residential and commercial real estate, so they're seeing the break twice. And earlier this year, there was a CCSR from the manager about tax diversification in general, and included in that was a Blue Ribbon Task Force from back in 2007 under, I guess it was former Councilman Branch's leadership, but it was a Blue Ribbon Task Force for Revenues and Expenditures, and it was done in '07. They did a lot of work, but it's almost 20 years old. So I know that there's some work being done, obviously, right now with the Process Improvement Steering Committee, looking at ways where we can be more efficient. But I just hadn't even thought about this until now, and I'd like to share it with you, Councilmember Cummings, and maybe have the PIS group look into this, and maybe we need to do this again and look at our revenue and expenditures a little bit more holistically.
Thank you. Other questions for clarification or about how we've grouped things?
I think you did a great job, and I think the council did a great job bringing up some incredibly good stuff.
Great. And a whole lot of help from staff that you have,
Oh,
just
without
to be
question.
clear. We are going to ask you to now use dots to show where your highest priorities are. Yep, we took those sheets away on purpose.
And we want to dot audit.
We have limited options on this one.
Yes, so you have 6 total dots in front of you. Your green dots, you have, I believe, 3 green dots. Or sorry, backwards. You have 1 green dot. That's your most important item. That's worth 3 points. You have 2 yellow dots. Those are worth 2 points each. And you have 3 blue dots worth 1 point each. If you want, you can put all your dots on, we're going to put our dots on the yellow circles. You could put all your dots on 1 yellow circle. It's your choice how you want to push your votes. You can spread them out. So the green dot is worth the most, yellow dots middle, and blue dots are worth 1 point. Questions about what you're doing?
And then you connect the dots. There you go.
And then we'll connect the dots. So take your time to come up and decide where you want to allocate your dots. It's up on the screen, so you remember which dots are worth most. And we'll get a sense from council where your collective priorities are. I'll let you all come as you're ready.
Go ahead up, get it started. Okay, let's begin to reconvene.
We're raising Cain.
Thank you for dotting. We're tallying up the totals. So I'll give you totals in a second. But economic development, jobs, workforce development had
Big winner.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 green dots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 green dots. Okay. 1 blue and 2 yellows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 green, 1 blue, and 2 yellow.
Mellow yellow.
This could be a long process.
That's blue.
Hey, get Lyndon Ramirez to count them.
Come to show me
The
space.
different colors. Yeah. Okay.
Get our auditor. Here he is, calling the auditor.
All right. Do you have your totals? Are working? Okay. Let's just confirm that we've got the right counts there. On tax and government affordability and revenue diversification, we have 1 green, we have 3 yellows and 2 blues. Public safety, 1 green, 4 yellows and 2 blues. Services based on demographics, 1 yellow, 1 blue. Invest in infrastructure, 1 yellow, 3 blues. Flooding and environment, 2 yellows, 7 blues. Affordable housing, 2 greens, 4 yellows, 5 blues. Mobility, transit, transportation trails, 3 yellows, 3 blues. Resident engagement, 3 blues. Education, 4 blues. Land use, 1 blue. ITA, 1 green, 1 yellow. So when we do our math, ITA was 1 green, 1 yellow. So economic development, when you add up the points, that's, 23. Next is housing. When you add up your weighted points, that's 19. Then safety is 13. And then we've got flooding and environment at 11, and tax, government affordability, revenue diversification also at 11. Then next would be mobility at 9. And then infrastructure at 5. ITA at 5. And education at 4. And let's see, I'll just no longer in order. Land use is at 1, resident engagement is 3. Anything else missing? Services based on demographics is 3. So we're missing 3 with the math. Did everyone use all their dots?
You can tell who the CPA in the crowd is.
Let me just double check the math.
So can you roll it out from top to bottom?
Yeah, so top to bottom, economic development, jobs, workforce development came out on top.
And that includes tourism.
And that includes tourism, yes. Affordable housing, including homelessness, is the second. And then public safety was third. Tied for fourth was flooding and the environment, and tax and government affordability and revenue diversification. So tied for fourth, that counts fourth and fifth. Then mobility, transit, transportation, trails. ITA, education. I think then there was a 4 somewhere, wasn't there? No? All right, so then invest in infrastructure, services, resident engagement, land use.
What was public safety again?
Public safety was third overall with 13 points. So I'll start with the highest priorities: economic development, affordable housing, public safety, government affordability, and flooding and environment. If you look at those as the 5 top priorities, how is that feeling? That feels like what a lot of you were talking about.
Yeah, I think we've been talking about that for quite some time now. But once again, the priorities do remain the priorities.
The things that are lower, had lower expressions of agreement, fewer dots on them. Do you have some concerns about where those are falling out?
Yeah, Josh.
Just a concern in general is that the public doesn't misinterpret, a lesser number of a dot for, and translate that into, we don't care about those things, especially when something like education or, other things up there, and resident engagement are coming in at lower. It would obviously be assumed that we would do a lot of resident engagement around all of these things that are of importance. So anyway, just wanted to say that out loud.
And Josh, if you don't mind me saying, I think when it comes to education, there is a separate entity. They do have a superintendent, they got a school board, they make their own budget and everything. And, our priority is, make sure they have the funding for it, but in terms of the actual, they set their own priorities.
Were you going to say something? No? Agree. All right. So where we want to go next is fleshing out what success looks like, in particular for the areas that have higher levels of support, even though all of the areas are important. So I want to start then with economic development and jobs and workforce development and tourism. if you're thinking it's 24 months from now, or maybe even 12 months from now, what would you like to see the city moving forward in the next 12 to 24 months? How would you know, how would staff know that they're meeting your expectations in moving economic development, jobs, workforce development, tourism forward?
Michael?
Well, one of the things that we need is a place to put those expanding businesses and retain the ones that we have here and answer the call. For example, many of our economic development leads come through the governor's office, through the work that they're doing. And when that call comes to Virginia Beach, we need to be able to answer that call and have sites, a diversity of sites. And I'm not talking specifically in reference to the conversation we had this morning, but inclusive of that. But we need to have a location, and we need to be ready to accept those opportunities as they come our way, especially for the ones that make sense, that are cohesive with our economic development strategy. I think that's really important. I think continuing to develop a workforce, the Vice Mayor mentioned career and technical education, and that is an important component to our economic development, jobs, and prosperity. And then finally, I would say that something that Councilmember Rouse said this morning was about what does economic development look like into the future, and we have to perform that analysis for Virginia Beach. One of the ways that people talk about it is an emerging creative class, which is we know we have so many creative and innovative people here in our community, and yet I think we could find ways to foster that creative energy in ways that translate to more economic opportunity in Virginia Beach, and I'd like to see us move in that direction.
Thank you, Michael. Cash?
Quickly, I'll be quick. This is a way where we talk about economic development, we talk about workforce development. This is where I think City Council and the school board, when it comes to VOTEC, this is where I think we need to take a more collaboration where we work together. Because it's true, the school has its own leadership, board, you name it. But we are lacking in certification jobs. And so my push is for us to start at middle school and high school, and so they are job ready. Just like we think of buildings and being shovel ready, we want to make sure that our elite students are job ready.
Thank you. A couple of years ago, a group of mayors and a group of business folks went to Germany to look at their internship and apprenticeship programs. And one of the things we have to do, when I mentioned before about communicating with Richmond, we have to change the OSHA laws and a few other work rules that are imposed on us, which prevent sophomores and juniors from actually starting to get engaged. But I think that might be, something that we seriously have to look at. Stacy, and then Worth.
Yes, just one metric that we should be looking at is the increase in the commercial tax base over year to year.
So use that as a way to measure success?
Correct.
Yep. Worth?
Thank you. That's a great idea. That's a great metric right off the bat. So earlier this morning, I was going to read this from our Department of Economic Development, the website of our Department of Economic Development, which is charged with economic development and bringing jobs and workforce. So these are key industries, which are, like everyone will recognize these industries very well. Advanced manufacturing, bio and life sciences, defense, IT and cyber, maritime and logistics, offshore wind, office and retail. Of course, the last one is kind of a niche and not necessarily an industry. But I think we already have very well, I think as a city, pursued and expanded our tax base and our economic development. We can do better. It's all about product, whether it's for industrial or office or retail. So I do like the commercial tax base. metric of getting it from 14 to, let's go to 15 or 16%, much less 20, but that's a good metric. But this is another metric that we don't necessarily need to use, but keep in mind that 3 out of every 4 new jobs is created by existing businesses. And we have a great ledger of those existing businesses that are in all these industries. So let's pay attention to our own. Thank you.
Okay, Josh.
Just for clarification, Julie, you're asking for things that staff could be working on for the next 2 years that would help achieve in this economic development realm, right?
Yeah, and to
Okay.
get a sense of how far and how fast they need to work.
Okay, so, and I've talked to a couple of council members about this, but, and not everybody, but, so I'm just I'll lay it out there as an idea. Back in 2001, and then there was an update in 2014, we came up with, policy guidelines for evaluation of investment partnerships for economic development. Is basically our public-private partnership policy and how and when we, make incentives available for, people when businesses come alongside the public sector. That policy is almost 10 years old, the last update, and still references light rail, the Vision to Action Community Coalition that doesn't exist anymore, plans that are out of date, and applies to developments that are $30 million plus. What's missing are all the priorities that we just talked about. So like environmental protection, affordable housing, promoting tree canopy, open space, redevelopment versus new development. A lot of those projects aren't necessarily $30 million plus projects. They're probably 15 to 30 or whatever it is. So I think it would behoove us to update because I think in order to see the things that we want to see, we got to provide a roadmap or a path for people and incentives for people to do what we'd like to see. So if we can maybe redo this policy in a today's timeframe and priorities sense, I think that would be really good. And alongside of that, in 2017, Patty Phillips, the former budget director, put together a slide deck that evaluated every single public-private partnership, because P3s, they get, each of them are different, and sometimes, the public doesn't fully understand, and they're complicated. So, and they involve different things. Operation Smile, for example, just involved land, whereas Town Center involved a TIF SSD framework. And but this slide deck told the story, the ROI of every single public-private we've had, including Town Center, Lynn Haven Mall, the amphitheater, Sportsplex, Operation Smile, and we've done a lot of things since 2017, including the Cavalier, the sports complex across the street. So I think if we're going to be investing, we're potentially investing public dollars in any of these priorities, I think we need to make sure to tell the story of, well, they've been success stories in these areas. These areas, they've been maybe not as much financial successes, but they've also had community benefits alongside them. And I'm thinking like the recreation P3s. So anyway, I would love to see a little bit of that where we're updating our incentive structure to align with current policy priorities.
Okay, Worth and then Rosemary.
We'll try to be a little bit more specific, which I don't know if that's what you're looking for or not, but the council just gave the green light for Rudy Park last week. Let's get moving on that, because that's good for business, it's good for tourism, it's good for our families. And hopefully it's one of the things that'll help attract more young families here. So get moving on that. We need to start looking for the acquisition of land to encourage businesses to come here. They've got to have a place to land. We can't suspend them in the sky, unfortunately. I really think we need an economic development director. We need a director for economic development. That is vacant right now. And Amanda does a great job, but she's got a lot of other things to do. And we really appreciate Amanda. So we need a plan for those kind of things. And we still have 7 lots left over in Corporate Landing that we can handle. But Central Beach District, we now have a master plan for that. and we've got some things moving forward on that. So I really think we need a financial plan for the Central Beach District of how we're going to pay for it. We've got a plan, but without funds, it's not going to happen. So those are a few specifics.
Okay, Worth?
Thank you. Rosemary, or Vice Mayor Wilson just stated what I was going to say, and that is the Economic Development Director for sure, and hopefully maybe a director that has some resort experience as well, because that is a really important part of our city and our economy. That, and thanks for pointing out. Sports tourism also I'd like to add, because that's a specific area of economic development that we talked about earlier this morning. Thanks.
Thank you.
Amelia?
Oops. Yes, I agree with all that Councilman mentioned, Remick, as well as Councilwoman Wilson, because we do need an economic development person. And I know we're running out of land, but we have many buildings around that can be repurposed to fit some of the businesses coming in. That's one thing you could look at. Instead of trying to have them have a new piece of land to build on, there's certain properties that could happen. Also, I serve on the Military Economic Development Advisory Committee, and they mentioned, one of the ladies mentioned how at age 38, some of the veterans are finished. They're out, and they're looking. So that's one area, you know, we could capitalize on, getting them job ready to help, because they already come with certain experiential experiences and so forth. So that would cut the whole process of us having to train them completely. So that's one bucket, a group we should look at. And also, not just the K through 12, but we have TCC, we have Virginia Wesleyan, we have a couple of other smaller higher ed that we could partner with to cover some of what we need, because especially where Councilman Remick talked about the jobs, advanced manufacturing, you mentioned biochemistry, and a lot of things are happening in that area that our partners at the higher ed can help, you know, repurpose in some way, get this population so then they will come, because some of them already have some family, and looking for where they could be and still earn enough to cover everything. Thank you.
Okay. Now, let me say that, let's put it this way, let's be honest. Economic development is the focal point and linchpin to make all the other yellow circles go. If we're going to move forward, we have to come up with new revenue streams. Because once again, the revenue streams we have now are not going to be sustainable in the future, especially with our infrastructure, stormwater needs, you know, keeping up with, public safety and everything. But the point is, though, we need that economic stimulus that will take care of our aging infrastructure and aging population, that would help us with, tax abatement and, help for people, that would help with affordable housing, help, once again, we were really strained in our last budget trying to find money for CIPs because we just didn't have, the money in the kitty. And I think if we walk away from here today, and then once again, as Amelia was saying, repurpose, Kemps River Shopping Center and some of the other ones, that are on the radar right now. But the thing is, we have to grow, but we have to grow smartly. And I concur with Worth and Stacy that we need more commercial properties on, to help out, and that would give also relief to the residential folks. But, without a vigorous economic development plan, but the other thing is to get around affordable housing and things of that nature is bring in the higher paying jobs that would help sustain them too. But once again, I think that an economic strategy of, growing the revenue streams, should be a very focal point so we can do everything else. Amelia?
That reminded me, for example, MOCA, when we talk about the arts, repurposing that with other cultural areas that can generate funds, because we do have a very creative community across the city. And the other thing that I mentioned is to do with mobility. This morning, I heard on, I think it could have been CNN, that cars are going to now start around 50,000 with what all that's needed and the lack of the steel that we need because we're going through the tariff and so forth. But people have to leave their cars home. What are we going to do about mobility to get them where they need to go? So we've got to look at that. If you don't have the funds to buy these new fancy cars or, repair, how are we going to attempt on transportation? That is very important. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else at this point? No, I tell you what, that was a good exercise. Patrick, do you have anything?
Yeah, so Mr. Mayor, members of council, the big thing I think with economic development, and we've talked about it before, is that because of all the increases, the inflationary increases associated with the CIP, we're in a state now where it doesn't pay for itself, right? So when we bring in a new business, the road improvement, the utility improvement, the stormwater improvement necessary doesn't cover the cost in terms of direct revenue. So it's one of those things that if we enter into it, we need to have an honest conversation as a staff and body about finding the funds to pay for the CIP upgrades. And I think what we need to do is we need to throttle into redevelopment while we're throttling out of greenfield development, because we're getting to a place where we're running out of land, right? But redevelopment is a heck of a lot more expensive than greenfield development, right? So we're going to also need to develop funding strategies for the types of patient incentives that are needed to spur repurposing and reprioritizing of old properties, right? And even possibly acquiring some of these properties. And Virginia Beach, we're blessed to be by this beach, and we have a great sustainable real estate market. But what that means is that we don't have land that are like in a Portsmouth or a Cincinnati or a Norfolk that are below market values, right? We don't really have places that are significantly cheap land that we can get. We don't got a lot of delinquent tax properties as well. So what that means is that for us to acquire land for repurposing, we're buying it literally at market value at time. Or if we're not buying land, we need to find out those incentives and create the financial tools to do that. So we need to honestly be thinking about the fact how we're going to do that, right? If we're we're never in an appetite where we're interested in raising tax revenues, right? This could be approached in a myriad of ways. It could be that we're looking at things such as more repurposing of dedications to kind of create the sources that we need to build out these CIPs for the roads, and or creating the tools that we need. So those are some of the things that we got to be mindful of, is that by itself, it doesn't pay for itself. And that's not to say you don't do economic development, because in addition to direct revenues, there's the business to business investments. There's the fact that we have businesses that are looking to expand in Virginia Beach, but they can't expand in Virginia Beach, so they're thinking about going elsewhere, right? Which would then cause a decaying factor, which would just harm us overall from a tax-based standpoint. So even if we're not getting direct revenue to cover it, we still got to be in there. But we just got to be mindful that there's a significant dollar associated with expanding out Innovation Park, and or also even thinking about stepping into the redevelopment game. And if the path we go down is to further explore this and this becomes one of your priorities, we can give you options to consider in how we can pay for that and address that. But it's going to require us to be bold as staff, but you all to be bold in your policy decision making as well if it's a priority of yours.
Well said. Okay, that was great stuff.
All right. I want to do the same conversation about affordable housing and homelessness. Thinking for the next 12 to 24 months, what would your expectations of staff be? What would success look like if you continue to make progress there? What's realistic that you'd like to see moving forward in the next 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, Josh?
Just one thing that comes to mind is, I know we just passed and created the Attainable Housing Program, which goes after a gap, I guess, funding gap, like by creating less real estate taxes due for the person who's doing the development. But I've heard from folks who are looking at this, and I know we're drafting the policy, but that it's not quite enough to get over the hump. And I know that there are other states that have been, I guess, ahead on this issue, and they're doing things like tap fees and expedited permitting and other kind of tools in the box that help around the edges that aren't necessarily just real estate taxes. Waiving permit fees, things like that. And I'm sensitive on that issue because I know it creates a workload for staff, because if we're asking people to expedite things, that means they're doing that instead of something else. So we need to be mindful on the resourcing side of the house. But just looking at other states to see what they've done that we could do.
Stacy?
I think, again, in addressing this affordable housing issue, like many municipalities across the country, we have an inventory problem. And we had a presentation last week where Deputy City Manager Krosky brought in this fantastic gentleman who gave us a whole presentation about our demographics and what we were needing in the city. And but given his North Carolina education, he wasn't able to answer the most important question was.
I knew we would go there eventually.
How many units do we need? And we don't know, but it's in the thousands. We need thousands and thousands of additional units of housing. And it all can't be, or it all shouldn't be, just multifamily housing. We need to offer some housing that is single-family homes that are affordable for our school teachers and our emergency service personnel and our city employees. So getting more units online is, to me, a key metric in judging success.
And what do you see as the city's role in getting more units online?
One, we need to make it easier for development to occur. Two, we need to identify more places. Again, it's a land use issue. We need to make more land available. And the trade-off is we have places now that are shopping centers or being used for commercial uses or other types of uses that we need to convert to residential, because we can't put residential in a lot of our remaining land. So we need to make a trade-off between shopping centers and other types of commercial uses where they can be residential if we allowed it to be, and move more of our commercial and light industrial to other places that aren't able to accommodate housing.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go Worth and Hutch.
Thanks, because it's good. I'll go right after Councilman Member Cummings, because it's the same type. It's inventory that's needed out there, both for rent but also for sale. And I'll come back to for sale in a minute. But we have, as a council, have approved of a lot of projects for the private sector, because affordable housing really is mostly done by the private sector here and across the country. A lot of it, though, is in multifamily for rent. So I think we should encourage more for sale and to be built by the private sector. It can't be our money, but it could be density, it could be reuse of existing land. But we do have a Virginia Beach Community Development Corporation, which is a 501c separate entity that we did a week ago, grant rezoning, and earlier this year gave for 60 new units in conjunction with NAMI. So that's good. That's 60 units. It's going to be done in, first singles and doubles and triples and not in home runs, affordable housing. I want to come back to also homelessness in a minute, because our housing and neighborhood preservation team, Ruthie Hill, and they did 2 studies. One is a housing study that I think may have given us some metrics for affordable housing, what's needed for the inventory. We need to go back and check with them on that, as well as they did a pretty thorough, exhaustive study on homelessness. And I believe they said we were meeting the needs now. At the same time, I think they said we were 100 to 200 beds short. So I'd say we need to go back, yes, to the housing study, both for affordable housing and homelessness. I think that was one other thing I was going to say, but it's not easy. This is a very, very difficult topic. We can't lower interest rates. I think that's the cause for our crisis at this point. But homelessness is also very important all across the city, and I think we're taking good steps, but we just need to keep on this. Thank you.
Okay, Hutch and Rosemary.
So, not to turn your thing a little upside down here, but for me, some of this is, I don't want to say, it's not warranted. I'm not trying to say that. But we have the planning director over there. We have, the housing. We have the deputy city manager. We have the city manager. I looked at it when I was the fire chief that you just give me the stuff and let me do it. You know what I mean? I had a team of 9 that were incredible. I would trust that they are going to bring back to us what the metrics are. I know we have to give general direction, but I've said it 100 times that we're here to help clear hurdles and try to stay at that upper level. And I think that's we are getting dangerously close to getting into mechanics in my mind. At least when I was in charge, that's how I felt. So I just caution us for that. I think what we're saying is all good stuff, but I don't think a lot of it would be really new to the folks that are running this day to day. So bringing us that. If there's stuff that we see that we're missing, we have subject matter experts in the area. Of course, I want to hear what everybody has to say. And then obviously on the, I've already stated, working with developers, figuring out that mid-level, what do we got to do? That to me is like where there's a hurdle, right? We've got to help figure that out. And then the homelessness, like Councilman Worth said, Director Hill has pointed out how many beds she needs and the personnel she needs to make that happen. And I think that is a hurdle that we have to help with, not that.
To market rate. And if that happens, all the work that you do and all the incentives that you do for workforce housing is going to be lost. So whatever we do for some, especially things that we're offering incentives for, we've got to make sure that they stay in place from homeowner to homeowner. And otherwise, you're doing this all for naught, because the next person could say, oh, I can sell this at market rate. Maybe we bought it for $200,000, now we can sell it for $400,000. So it's just a word of caution.
Yeah, thank you. Amelia?
We also want to credit Ruth with that whole, which we got the idea, I think, from Richmond, but using the incentive performance grant. It's so nice, we're able to mention yesterday that 180 units, all affordable, are coming up right off of the Simon Outlet along Burton Station. And one other thing we could do is we have to hold sometimes the developers' feet to the fire. For example, we have 345 units coming up right off of Baker Road. Some of you will know where the old sports complex that was not finished. And I deferred it because I said we need a certain percentage, like how we have at Cypress Point, that would be affordable. If you don't ask for it, it doesn't happen. They can take it back to the drawing board. So September 16th, they're going to come back. But we need to put some effort on that. It's not just to do with profits, but we also definitely, that is second, affordable housing. So we need to really emphasize and tell our developers this is what we need. We cannot go so much vertical because we don't have the land, but we can go, we can go vertical instead of horizontal to increase and have people buy those just like condos. So they're not apartments, but like condominiums. And they feel a sense of ownership, even though they're stacked that way. Thank you.
Yeah, then Michael.
Thank you, Mayor. One aspect of this that I am by no means an expert in, but that I want to raise to this conversation is eviction reduction. And Councilman Hutchins and I particularly have been speaking a lot with 4Kids, who is an advocate in this area and recognized regional leader. And in the course of those conversations, we explored deeper the impact that the evictions have on families and the trauma that is caused to a family who experiences that often more than once in their lifetimes, once you fall into that cycle. But then I was also contemplating some of the other challenges that a municipality faces when an eviction occurs, such as what we have in certain neighborhoods in the district that I serve, issues with waste management, for example, that's related to that. And that's just one of many examples of the significant and material and immaterial, or I should say less tangible impacts that an eviction can have. And so as we're talking about affordable housing and homelessness, I'm in no way making broad criticism of the city's strategy in eviction reduction, but because I don't know every aspect of it, but I do think we need to keep that as at the front of the conversation, because if you can stop someone on the upstream of that, it's going to not only have financial savings, but it will save the trauma that's associated with that really challenging activity.
Okay, let me, say this. I think what it really comes down to, my friends, is that we have to be honest and have the conversation about the barriers to success that we are facing. And, that being said, the answers are not easy. Let me put it this way. Kind of the third rail of conversation about one of the problems is the regulatory costs that go into any house. I am told by some folks, with the real estate industry, that Wells Fargo mortgage, says there's usually around a $93,000 regulatory cost that goes in basically to a new average house. So if you buy a piece of land for $150,000, you're talking about $250,000 before the first nail goes in the first board. And then once again, we have to find that balance, because we made a commitment to stormwater. And then we also have, the costs that go in. I remember, I think there was an apartment complex near Northampton a couple of years ago. where the developer said that I think the rents for a studio were $1,500 a month, mostly because of all the stormwater precautions and delays and things that they had. So, finding the balance for that. And the regulatory red tape, a number of years ago, Steve Lawson, who has a stellar reputation of being affordable housing, he owns Chartway and a lot of apartment complexes that are good. They built a facility on, I think it was Mediterranean and 19th, which included not only affordable housing, but, housing for the disabled. And, hey, that is some of the prime real estate in the city there. But once we made the commitment, but from what I understand, I think it was a couple of years getting through all the red tape and regulatory, things, that are necessary. And, but the thing is, I just think we have to be, I think we really have to, when we're talking about public education, about why we make the decisions we do. Because when we put density housing into a neighborhood, the neighborhoods come out and have concerns and things about that nature. I was recently at an event at a senior facility that's relatively new on Virginia Beach Boulevard in District 4, the Arbor. Now, I just saw the facade from the beginning, and I drove by it a number of times. I was not aware that it's 150 units that really go out into the back. And, elderly live there, it's affordable, mixed race, and everybody, you have a community back there. But once again, I think with the perceptions, a lot of communities really show up and say, oh, that's a great idea, but just don't put it here. And I think, everybody lives on a house that may have been, or work in a building that one time was farmland or something else. And the thing is, if we're going to create that the economy that we need, to bring in the businesses we need for the new revenues, and to find the places for people live. And, I can say back in the old Centerville days, when you work with the community and educate the community, we were able to put the Cascades and Infinity on the corners of Lynn Haven and Centerville Turnpike. And there were about 450 units combined there. But working with the public ahead of time, having a good neighbor policy, bringing the neighbors to the table about, what the traffic impacts are going to be. But now you have a situation where everybody's a neighbor there. And I think that's what we have to do. And it really comes down to an education about justifying the decisions that we make.
Mr. Manager, any questions about council's priorities around affordable housing and homelessness?
No.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to go to the third item, and that was public safety. So public safety, you all talked about a variety of things of what public safety means to you. And I want to hear from you in the next 12 to 24 months, what are your priorities? They're just, you remember what you say, but public safety about the employees, about equipment and technology. LEDA is in there, safe neighborhoods, the proliferation of shootings and providing other things for youth to do. Public safety being more than just police, it's all of public safety. So council, if you're envisioning the next 12 to 24 months and you're giving staff guidance about what you expect them to be focusing on to continue the emphasis on public safety, what does that look like?
And
Michael, no, I'm sorry, Patrick.
No, Ms. Mayor, I was just going to really ask for this one. Is there anything in particular? Because, in general, what I tend to hear from you all is that from all across, from all hazards, all the different department and public safety, is that they're doing well and mostly maintain the status quo. So really, what I would like to glean from this is this just an agreement or affirmation to continue, or is there particular areas that you want us to kind of glean and hone in on?
Okay, Michael.
Well, to speak directly to that, I think it is for me, generally, continuation, as you noted, as you stated. But I would add to that, of course, LEDA. Ideally, we would have, I don't know what that looks like exactly, if you can break ground in 24 months. I would ask you, do you think we could break ground in 24 months on LEDA? And then I got a couple other things.
Director Hanson, can you come and address that question?
If not, could we be close?
Do you think we can break ground on LEDA in the ITA in 24 months?
And Michael, we do need a leader.
Need a LEDA. I've been.
I heard that before.
Councilman, I think 24 months is pushing it. I think it's right on the cusp. In truth, we have some preliminary work that we're trying to get done so we can get the design work done. I'm estimating the design work is going to take about 18 months probably. I think 24 months is probably right about that part where we would be looking to break ground, yes, sir. But I can't be 100%.
All right, well, so we're within the window. You're telling me there's a chance. Thank you.
Say it was a done deal.
The other thing is, we should talk about the workforce, and in the workforce, I mean, we just completed the market salary survey, and we also made adjustments based on the results of that survey. So I think continuing to monitor that is important. But we know that the workforce at the police department is down more substantially than it was the last time we met. Understanding the reasons that that condition exists, I think progress would look toward closing that gap, particularly within the police department and also the sheriff's offices. And then I think the ultimate metric is the crime statistics. And although the statistics in Virginia Beach are positive, and we have a lot to be grateful for in that area, then there are some other questions about crime statistics, such as different constituencies don't report crimes with the same frequency that others do. Sometimes crimes are underreported. There's certain categories of crimes that are not calculated by the FBI's standardization of crime reporting statistics. So I don't know that we can rely fully on the crime statistics, but they are a great window and metric, and it's been a positive one for us. So that's just something to continue to monitor. Thank you.
Rosemary?
I agree with Michael. This year we had a great budget where we did a whole lot with public safety, and I think all of us are proud of that.
On your computer or on your table? Yeah.
I'm just wondering, and I'm definitely not trying to micromanage or anything, but if there's any way we could look at the time frame it takes to get from submitting an application to actually becoming a police officer or firefighter, if there's anything that can be done so it's more of an express route. I know a young man that's going through trying to become a police officer. He does one step and he's got to wait several weeks, and he does another step and does another step. And some people, while they're going through that application process, they can't afford it. They need a job then. And so there's some way they could become interns or something in between while they're waiting to become a police officer. Maybe that could help fill, because I know we're 80 police officers short. There's some ways we could look at to sort of expedite some of it, or make it easier for people to, I'm not saying lessen the quality of who we're looking for, absolutely not, but make it affordable for people who want to become an officer, but they can't wait for that whole 6-month process. If we can find some stipends or some other work for them to do in the meantime, if we could possibly look at that. Thanks.
Okay, I do have one. We started a program, Councilwoman Wilson and several others, and it was approved by the staff for the parks after dark. And now we're in the 3 sites. So I would like to see that, continue, because it's making a difference within these 24 months as we're doing evaluating of each site. we should continue, and I don't know if there are any other council members looking at a site. Speak now.
Mr. Mayor, Dr. Ross Hammond, I'd like to add, all three sites are going phenomenally, right? I would say that I think we're to the point where the sheriff's department and the police department couldn't accommodate a fourth location. And the reason being is that Parks After Dark typically is situated around our peak season, where we're pulling bandwidth to help support the activities down at the oceanfront as well, right? So, we're usually doing Parks After Dark with a significant complement of sheriff deputies, and our school resource officers tend to be leaving the schools as well. And talking to the Sheriff Rocky Holcomb and also Chief Newdigate, they kind of feel like this is a good stretch for them to do 3. But if we were to go to 4, I think they'll have a lot of concern about the capacity to do it well.
Okay, so I think we should sustain what we have. How's that?
Nice.
Thank you.
Good. Let me, just finish up here. I think the one point of pride I think we have as a council and as a management staff, we did answer the bell. We did hear the call. Now, remember, a little over a year ago, Chief Pravis came to us and said he was 60, bodies down. And say, okay, we'll give you 30 this year, we'll give you 30 next year. And we were proud to go to the graduation where they had 2 graduating classes, one of 20 and one of 30. So we did answer the bell on that one. There was a call for increased money for cancer screening. We answered the bell on that one. Police requested a salary survey. We did it. We responded. We answered the bell on that one. I think to Michael's point, I think the thing is, let's keep this momentum going. And yes, I realize we are 80 police officers short. But when you talk about other mayors regionally, and if you talk to the mayors locally, they have far more vacancies with far less population. Back in the day when people were talking about defunding the police, we went ahead and funded them. And once again, the police will tell you that they are getting the support they need, they're getting the equipment they need. And believe me, I talk to everybody with a uniform anywhere I see them, Wawa or McDonald's, anywhere. And I can tell you, based on my informal thing, a lot of the folks are happy working with the city right now for what I see and are grateful for what we have done for them. So let's keep it going.
So, Mr. Mayor, I am in my head deciding, I'm seeing a lot of you getting squirmy and thinking you might need another quick break, or we can do a couple more and then take a break.
If we take a break, how many more of these different sessions do we need?
I think the way the manager just framed the question is what we're going to be needing for the rest of them. Tell us, keep it going, or is there something to switch?
We okay going forward? Okay, let's keep going.
Because, Mr. Mayor, I kind of feel like with flooding and environmental, we probably need to have more of a conversation on tax and government affordability. But I think in flooding and environmental, my gut is kind of feels the same way that you all feel with public safety. You all understand the flood protection program went from 567 to 1.3. We're making some headways into it, albeit we know we have some challenges on the regulatory side in District 2, Councilmember Henley's district as well. But I think more or less councils just keep putting the pedal to the metal as it relates to those items, but are there any particular items besides, trying to knock out those permitting issues that we have in District 2 on those flood protection projects that you think we need to focus on?
Yeah, Cash.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I think for me, from just looking at sports tourism, youth sports tourism, and that to me is something that that's a big revenue driver for the city of Virginia Beach. And I just want to let you guys know when it comes to traveling teams that come here to compete at the Sportsplex, they generate lots of tax revenue, heads in bed, the AIDA restaurants. And for me, and that's services based on demographics, okay?
We're on flooding right now.
Yeah, sorry.
We're on flooding?
We're jumping, sorry.
I mean, and it can flood when they're playing sports.
We're proud of Cash, he thinks ahead.
Hey, can I help him out real quick?
Yeah, go right ahead.
I want to go back to the public safety for a second. I did forget to say something, so I'm going to help you out here, buddy. All right? We do need to think about our apparatus across all aspects of our public safety, where we're keeping them, the fleet management, city garage. There's a lot. I've taken a couple of you by there. I'm sorry, I forgot to say it a minute ago. It's one of the underling things that I think is a metric that we need to worry about. We have a lot of rolling stock that takes a lot to keep up, and LJ knows it's a huge job that we just need to stay on top of. Thanks. Sorry about that. You're welcome.
Okay, Josh?
Is this environment and
Flooding,
flooding?
yes, flooding and environment.
Okay, environment and flooding for
Cash
200
has got to be
police
somewhere in
officers.
20 minutes, so.
We need a break.
Yeah.
So, so the flooding we've talked about. Environment, I think is a separate and distinct thing, and I don't want to kind of, give that broad strokes. And I know we all found out, and we already knew, and I certainly already know and know better that trees are important to people in the city of Virginia Beach. And our tree canopy in particular, growing, enhancing and preserving the older trees, the hardwoods in particular. So as we go about our flooding projects, there's both environmental consequences and then also environmental benefits alongside of the things we're doing. I mean, we sent people back to the drawing board on Rudy Park, and they came back and they described 10 degrees cooler and lots of trees and shoreline protections and all those sorts of things. So we need to be doing the same thing about our flood protection program projects. And then we also need to be, the urban forest management plan, the update that just came out. There's some low-hanging fruit in there, and there are some policy recommendations. I would love to see us working on that. I'd love to work with you on that, Ms. Huntley, in particular, and the group that we spoke about before to help residents, I think, understand. I mean, if you get up on the top of the West End or a parking garage in Town Center or on the beach, at the resort in a parking garage, and you look out, we are a really green city. We've lost some ground, certainly in percentage tree canopy, but we have resources to grow it, and I think that residents need to be assured that it's something that's important to us, and if it's important to us, then we need to talk about it, and we need to show people instead of just tell them.
Okay, great. Anybody else? Yeah, Barbara.
Just a question, when you speak about the trees, we had quite a lot of money that we got for tree mitigation from the CVAL project, but we didn't know where we could plant those trees, and that was one of the reasons we really needed an ITA plan, so we could know where the right place would be. Have we ever done anything to help resolve that, or are we still sitting there with $1 million in the bank waiting to know where we can spend it?
So, Councilmember Henley, we'll reshare the plan that we shared with council on how we're moving towards spending that money in multiple districts. I think we shared it with staff of council probably a year ago or several months ago, but we'll reshare that information with City Council again.
Well, I was hoping that the mitigation was going to happen at the place where the trees were taken down. But anyway, that's one of the reasons we really needed to work on the ITA plan, because we didn't know where to plant the trees until we knew what was going to happen where, because you don't want to plant trees and then have to take them out. But, I mean, if we're sitting there with the money in the bank and we just don't know where to spend it, but our folks really are concerned about their trees. They love their trees at Virginia Beach, and we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing.
Okay, thank you. I think a frustration everybody has, whether it be this council or other people, is, especially in District 2, when things are out of our control and trying to fix a problem. And the highlight of that, I think, is the NIMO project, which is held up, on infinitum far too long because of regulations, federal regulatory agencies, and it's totally out of our control. And I think that's a frustration Barbara has in her district. I know the people there. We get the pictures when there's backups there. And this is a safety issue. But once again, hopefully we can do something to try to expedite this. But I think it's a frustration in dealing with environmental issues. We had a little wetlands in the middle of Lynn Haven Parkway between Indian River and Centerville for decades and decades. And it took a long time to get it mitigated. And unfortunately, it was a couple fatal fires with fatalities, and a couple of folks that had slow response from EMS that we were finally able to get it done. But once again, I think that, NIMO has to be a priority. Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, I am going to say you guys need a break just to stretch for a second, and then you can.
About 5 minutes.
I'm going to say 10, but
Okay.
it'll be a quick break. We're still going to get out in time.
No, Weil, if you got to leave, you're okay. I don't think so.
I need to run to the bathroom. don't think we need to go by one through all of them, because the statement Patrick was saying earlier of, in general, staff is clear that you want us to continue moving forward on several of them.
That is correct.
So we don't need the deeper dive into what exactly do you mean. There are two that we want to just make sure we're clear on, and that is this tax and government affordability and mobility, transit, transportation, trails. So the rest of them are known enough to staff, and you've spoken enough that they feel like they have a good sense of the direction you're asking for.
Okay, good.
So I'm going to ask on this tax, government affordability, revenue diversification, what you're looking for staff to do, particularly when you're balancing, we want them to do a lot more stuff for our residents. How do we balance maintaining the affordability with what we're asking to happen? What are you envisioning the staff could do? And Patrick, do you want to say that any more clearly than I do?
No, I think you did a pretty good job, and I understand council not asking for direction. We'll take any kind of direction the council wants to give, obviously, but trying to get a sense of what are you looking for in terms of tax and government affordability, and just taking into account the needs and desires for economic development and the infrastructure associated with that, and also the sports tourism associated with that, plus the other needs of the city as well. You know, trying to get a sense of where is council trying to land on this? Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Stacy, could I ask you to get things rolling on this?
My pleasure. Over the last several years, we've seen a very dramatic increase in the rate of city spending and the rate of taxation on our homeowners. Just in this last year, although the rate did not go up, it remained at 97 cents, the assessments went up. And, we've heard from several homeowners that their assessments went up 25, 30%. And there were others that maintained or may have gone down. But overall, I mean, we were at a right at 4.75% increase in the assessment. And that's a direct, increase to the average homeowner of a 5% increase in their real estate tax. And the overall, the amount of city spending increased about 4.7% year over year. But yet we give not with our public service, we really took care of our police and our firefighters with a 13% raise. But the overall increase in salaries was a 3% raise. And the average homeowner in Virginia Beach didn't see a 3% raise. They were flat, and maybe marginally better, but flat. So we're putting more and more of a burden every year on the homeowner, and they're feeling the pain. Okay, I think we've reached a saturation point to where people are saying now, enough is enough. We can't continue this kind of an increase. And when you looked at our satisfaction survey, it was the number one issue of contention. I mean, people are happy. They think the city's great. Think we do a great job of running the city. But their number one point of contention was the housing affordability and the amount of taxes they're paying on the homes they do own. So we all hear it over and over and over again. Enough is enough. And we need to be cognizant of the fact that we just cannot, every time the city has an increased need, we just can't go to our citizens and say, well, you got to pay more. We're going to have to make some tough choices, just like families make a tough choice every single day on their own budgets. They have to decide, Are we going to get a new car? Are we going to keep this one going another year? Are we going to fix the roof, or are we going to try to patch it and make do for another year? You know, are we going to get new clothes this year, or are we just going to, you know, just keep wearing the ones we have and pass down to the next child? So these are real serious issues that people are facing, and we've just, as I say, we've reached a saturation point. We've reached the point where people have said enough is enough. We can't do it. So if we have to make tough choices as a family, we have to make some tough choices as a city. And one of my priorities was to maintain public services. And I get that there's a trade-off, but that's why we're here. We have to make these tough decisions.
Okay, Barbara and Rosemary.
Well, Stacy has said it so well. And, you know, we've talked about a lot of things that we would really like to do this year. But, you know, we talk about affordability of the house. Well, an awful lot of that has to do with the taxes. And, you know, and we know, and it's a good thing, our property is appreciating. And so when folks get that assessment increase, they've got a tax increase even if we leave the rate the same. And I think we're maxed out. And, you know, it's really unfortunate that we're going to have to make some choices. But this is the year that we've talked about a lot of things that we would like to do. And we would really like to do all this stuff. But we're going to have to make some choices. And I know I keep hearing from people who say the city has just got to control its spending. When we talk about a new building and we say, well, this is going to cost $82 million, you know, the people just, I don't care what it does, $82 million is a lot of money. And I think we're saying the numbers so quickly that it sounds like we think it's not much money. But it is a lot of money that we're talking about with all these things. And we look at roads. We finally are doing Elbow Road after how many years we were supposed to have started that road? But it's costing us over $100 million. The inflation for our infrastructure is terrible. And as much as we want all to do all of these things, we're not going to be able to. And so this is going to be a tough year for us all because I think our folks have really got all they can pay in taxes. And I think we're going to have to make some terrible choices. It's not going to be easy.
Rosemary?
So last year, the rate remained the same, 97 cents. But the year before, it was 99, and we did drop it 2 cents, from 99 to 97 cents. But the assessments go, and it's affecting more people in the coastal communities because the housing prices on the water, and Worth sees it in his district, I see it in mine, you see it in yours, probably Josh sees it in his. This coastal communities, people want to be on the water, and the prices of those have gone sky high. I mean, my assessment has gone up hugely because I live on the water. And then last year, with the budget, we cut 5 positions. And it was painful. It was really painful. And I think it was the right thing to do. But we're going to have to, you talk about cutting spending, and I'm hoping that the Process Improvement Commission will come out with some ideas of how we can save some money and improve things. And, you know, we may have to cut some more positions because that's real money as well. So without hurting services. So it's not just not raising the rate or lowering the rate, but also cutting our spending, which is probably our biggest expense is personnel. And we're probably going to need to look at what positions are not really, can be consolidated. We're usually we don't usually fire people. We can find them a place somewhere else. But we may have to figure out some of these positions. And last year with those 5, it was pretty painful. So just know that it's not an easy step. But I agree that I'd love to see this decrease the rate again this year.
Okay, Worth.
Thank you, Mayor Dyer. Thanks for the discussion. One of these stars up here was mine, to keep the real estate tax as it is or lower them. So that being said, with the bond referendum, the citizens did say that council could raise real estate tax rate 4.1 cents. And this body, this is before I got here, did not. Of course, we could still do that today, but as Vice Mayor Wilson said, we just reduced the tax last year, kept it the same this year. So the bond referendum, $567 million, really, as we're seeing, well over $1 billion, 1.1, and we're paying for that and not raising the tax, real estate tax, to pay for that. I find that amazing that we're doing that. So as soon as I said, lower the tax or keep it the same, we are absorbing that over $1.1 billion in extra cost because of the flood mitigation program that we voted 72% to do. So that people do need to keep that in mind in terms of government spending, because that is an existential issue for the city. That being said, I hear from a lot of citizens that we are a victim of our own success. And yes, real estate tax has gone up dramatically because of the values in my district and 3 or 4 others, I'm sure in District 2 as well. So I think the citizens are over the increase, the dramatic increase, 10, 15, 20, 30%, some year over year. And I've just got to represent them and say enough is enough. Where we cut on spending, I don't have any easy answers. I just spoke about the bond referendum. That's a big area right there. That's $30 or $40 million, I think, every year. The other comment I want to make is this budget was creative this year. We did diversify the tax revenues with a boat registration fee. And as I said earlier, we raised the meals tax. That did raise revenue, but there's a lot of people that are really upset about that. And then I'm going to keep saying it, the TIP fund is paying for a lot of the infrastructure right now in this year, next year, and following years on infrastructure, not for projects. The TIP fund also is paying $800,000 for the second year and the next 3 years to the general fund. Again, not the original aim of the TIP fund. So I get it. We do get a lot of District 6 and the resort does get a lot of support from the budget, as it should, to invest in tourism. But we've got to watch our spending. Thank you.
Okay, Josh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, council member, for bringing up that point about the absorbing the 4.2 or 4.1 cents. And then on top of that, the 2 cents from a couple years ago, and I believe there was another 3 cents over the course of, I think it was the last maybe 6 cycles. Total almost 9.
Was that for the rec centers?
Mr. Mayor, I think when I first got here in 2020, July, the tax rate was $1.0175, right? And then if you take the 4.1 out of that, I think it's been roughly 7 cents. Kevin, you need to step up to the microphone. Mm-hmm. I think it's 2.75 plus the 4.1.
That's correct, Mr. Manager. Yeah, that would be correct. The 4.1 that was associated with was the estimated amount that ultimately ended up being dedicated to support the bond referendum as it was approved, and that was absorbed through the organic assessment growth year over year.
And what is that roughly debt capacity wise? Like
In terms of
our ability to pay for our capital projects? 7 cents over the last however long.
So just quick math. So every $10 million, of bonds, about $1 million in debt service. So if there were $70 million in year-over-year revenue through real estate tax revenue, that could support about $70 million in debt service.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I remember I'd asked before about what the assessment growth actually meant for our revenue growth. And I want to say, and I'm doing this from memory, Kevin, so I'm glad you're here, but I remember the natural assessment growth combined with the new construction totaled somewhere in the neighborhood of $36 or $37 million, between $36 and $38 million. And so that's new construction and then just natural assessment growth. So you take half, roughly half, that goes to schools, so you're left with roughly, $18 million. And then you take away from that dedications, and then you're left with roughly, $15 million. And this is just kind of rough napkin math. But, and I know several times around the table over the last couple of years, we've been asked to, come up with 15, 18, 28 million dollars to, finish road projects that have been languishing for years, and then we all of a sudden we get hit with revised budget estimates, and, we need to come up with cash, and so, or debt capacity. So I want everybody to kind of just keep that in mind. I certainly do. I think it's a relatively affordable place to live. I think most people are pleased with their services. And I certainly respect everybody who and I empathize with people who are struggling. And I think there are ways where we can provide relief. And we certainly do. We provide more tax relief as a city than any other locality in the region. And it's growing year over year. So, and not to mention the state mandates that you were talking about, Mr. Mayor. So those are tied to that too. But anyway, I just figured I'd throw a little bit of that out there.
Kevin, Mr. Mayor, Kevin, I think you need to clarify. I think
The
you-
$70 million
was
in
$700
debt
million.
service is the equivalent of $700 million in program bonds. Yes, sir.
Okay, Cash.
So, just quick math here. Not me, but you. So, he's the expert.
I need my calculator.
That's good.
So if we are going to try to keep the tax rate where it's at, and that's really our plan as council, wouldn't we need a new revenue source coming in order for that to be true? Or we would, but in theory, have to cut services?
I'll start with that, Kevin. I think the council's talking more. What I'm hearing is that some members of council, maybe a majority of councils, worried about the impact of the inflationary increases on the households, and we can't control the assessments because of how the state constitution is. So I think a lot of the council members are asking for us to consider looking at a decrease, right? Holding it the status quo gives a lot more flexibility, right? So if we were to present a recommended budget at 97 cents, which is the current tax rate, it gives us a lot more flexibility to achieve some of the other things that the council indicated that it wants us to do. If we are to decrease it, say a penny or a couple pennies, it removes that flexibility. And we don't know enough yet to see what that means yet in terms of where we are, but if that's where the council wants to go, it just basically creates more difficulty in navigating the budget. And that's where the conversation came from several council members, is that we may need to look at how we spend, right? It could also mean that we continue to look at our dedications again, right? Because we did make some reductions to those, but maybe some of them could take some further reductions in combination with a decrease and still be able to plug in some of these other priorities that we want, and look at some of our other fund balances to see if there's a needs for that could be generated surplus or things like that. So if we stay the same, there's more capacity and more room to do stuff. If we reduce, it makes it more challenging. And if you reduce, it also brings down our debt capacity and our bonding capacity as well, that we'd have to take into account.
Thank you, City Manager. Thank you. But for me, it makes me think, and you guys probably know more than me, and so I'm okay with that. I care about the people, and I just want you to know that sports tourism is got to be our driving, I think, okay, driving.
How do you feel about sports tourism?
I was passionate. I was in my mode and messed it up. Right?
You got your rollerblades on, right? Yeah.
But wouldn't we, and the reason why I say, wouldn't we need a new revenue source, i.e. sports tourism, something in sports tourism to offset the balance where we can still maintain our current tax rate and not have to cut services? I mean, that's really what I'm saying again.
Kevin, I'll go again.
Oh,
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Sir, it depends. We don't know a lot yet. Right now, we're just getting a general sense of what council's tolerance is as we start to think out the budget that we're going to present the council in March. And this is early, right? But we generally like to get a feedback of what your tolerance is going to be, as so Kevin and I can set expectations with the department heads when they start to get their wish list together. In September, we usually meet with them and tell them, hey, this is the lay of the land, this is the world, this is the vibe check we're getting from council, right? And then Kevin works to put that together for you all in November for the 5-year forecast to get a little bit more feedback from you all. And then eventually we'll have a budget retreat, probably end of January, February time, beginning of February time frame, to kind of let you know this is kind of how things are rolling out. We'll get the assessments from their wonderful city assessor, and that'll give you a general sense of where we want to go. If council wanted to dedicate additional funding for sports tourism, that could happen via, maybe council would say, raise a penny in the real estate tax and tie it to sports tourism. No one is saying that. Let me clarify. Council could also say something to the effect of, we got current dedications. Some of them may have capacity, or some may need to be repurposed towards new priorities. Council could say, stay the same or go lower, but take whatever we got existing and reprioritize it to prevailing needs of the city, which could be things like sports tourism investment or expansion of the innovation park for expanding our economic base and things like that. So there's options to it, but as I think Mrs. Henley said, all those options have choices, right? And some of those choices are palatable and some of them are not palatable. But Mr. Cummings, as he said, the households are going through the same thing as well, right? You know, sometimes you got to choose between a new car or keeping the mortgage payment. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Rosemary, Josh, Michael.
So something that Chesapeake has done the last couple of years was, rather than reducing their rate, is they gave a credit on their citizens' tax bill. So let's say it was a 3 cents real estate credit. And so if we're contemplating a rate reduction, I'd like to at least look at that to see. That's what Chesapeake has done these last few years, which is still the same amount of money, but instead of a rate decrease, it's a credit that would be given to their homeowners. And so I think it would be worth looking into.
Okay, Josh, and then Michael.
Thank you, Mayor. And something I wrote down I forgot to say before, but Mr. Manager, you brought up. I know we dipped into some of these dedications. I think they need to, if there are any others that that have way too healthy fund balance that are that we're not utilizing, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. Recognizing, of course, the funds that have already been kind of tapped into. So if there's new ground to cover in that area, I think it's worthwhile.
Hey, Michael.
Talked it out.
Thank you. I want to keep this conversation as friendly and positive as it has been so far, but I also have to express some frustration because I share the sentiments that have been expressed about the burdens that individuals and households are experiencing. Those of us who just completed a campaign last year can affirm, and not that you needed to complete a campaign to affirm, but almost everyone we spoke to rose that as the number one issue. So we know that it is. But what confounds me, and I've been on the council for more than 6 years, so let's call it about roughly 12 retreats, the same people who call for a reduction in tax rate, Mr. Cummings excluded in this instance, for now. We'll revisit this 6 months or 12 months later. The same people who call for that reduction are calling for new spending in the same meeting. And I have no idea how those individuals square that. How are we going to pay for a new $160 million plus recreation center in the southern part of the city and provide the services we've committed to providing and cut taxes? One way is by expanding the tax base. I'm all for that. And I'm not trying to be argumentative or combative. How are we going to pay for an aquarium expansion and renovation, $100 million road projects, and honor our commitments to the people of Windsor Woods who deserve flood protection and are entitled to it? And so it's just a little bit frustrating, and I find it frankly some largely hypocritical, that this narrative continues to emerge retreat after retreat after retreat. I would like to see I'm for a tax reduction, but I would also like to see some responsibility and consistency. I'm not lecturing anyone here. I'm just pointing out the obvious, that we cannot increase spending and reduce taxes in the same meeting.
Okay, Stacy.
Hey, I'm not calling for an increase in spending. What I'm calling for is a reprioritization of our spending. We're working with the Process Improvement Commission to hopefully find ways to be more efficient, or to find some ways that we can save in our spending, working with the city manager's office and with the budget director, trying to get out ahead of this before the budget comes out. But we can't continue to increase our spending 5, 6, 8% every single year when people's incomes are flat or declining. So that's just, we can't continue. That's not a matter of can we or not, or can we? We can't. We cannot continue to increase the burden on the homeowners, because there's a point to where they just, I'm all in. I have no more. And what are you going to do? You're going to take their house away? No. So we need to be more sensitive to that looking forward. And I'm not calling for any more. Our budget last year was $2.8 billion, and that's schools, that's everything all in. I know that that's not discretionable income, but if we kept it flat and reprioritize some spending, we could give some tax relief to the homeowner. And going forward, we need to start thinking that way, that if inflation's 2.5%, we need to start thinking of a 2.5% increase, or maybe even a slightly less than 2.5%, because we're outspending people's income. And we can't continue to do that. It's not a matter of, it's not a matter of want to, it's a matter of we can't. So I'm saying we've reached that point, that not calling for more spending, calling for a reprioritization of it. And I think that's what most people in the city that I'm speaking to, that's what they're asking for.
Okay. Yeah, Rosemary.
Our budget this past year, a large part of the increase was salaries, which we really needed to do. We really needed to do it for public safety and for our other employees. So even if you keep everything the same, does that mean you don't give the employees a raise each year? And when everybody else around you is getting raises. So you just need to figure all of that in. It's not just we're spending more, it's our employees deserve a raise every year because their costs are going up, and they need it to manage their families. So we just need to take that in consideration.
Yeah, sure. Stacy first.
That's great. So if we're gonna say our employees should live on a 3% increase, then how do you look in the mirror and say, but we're gonna raise the cost of government double that? You know, there has to be some correlation there. There has to be some common sense reasoning. I'm not saying don't give anybody a raise. I'm saying there's got to be a correlation there. That if the cost of government goes up 3%, then our spending should go up at most 3%. So I'm not saying don't give people raises. I'm not saying fire people. I'm saying let's find ways to be more efficient. Let's find ways to reprioritize what we're spending and what we're doing so that we're not continuing to put this increased burden year over year over year on the homeowner.
Okay, Josh and then Michael.
Just a quick question, speaking of the pay raises, and I think it's important to keep numbers in mind, even though I can't remember the exact number of the employee raises. What was it, somewhere in the $13 million range?
Kevin, can you come back up?
Thanks, buddy.
Kevin, I think it'll be good to approach it as every year, what's the 3%? And then you can talk about what it was with the market salary survey.
So for the general fund, roughly 3% compensation adjustments, equivalent about $15 million. So the market salary survey, there was some direction from City Council was to target those that were most in need, and primarily with a heavy emphasis on the public safety departments, and combine between the 3% for the general workforce and those through the market salary implementation, it was closer to about $30 million in total compensation year-over-year increase.
Okay, I really appreciate that, just because, so that 13 million is floating around in my head, right next to the $38 million when we kept the rate the same and the natural assessment growth. That was then knocked down to 16 million, and then the dedications off of that. So like just keeping the rate the same, to your point, doesn't cover the raises. And then we've got road projects or exigent circumstances that come up, and other new programs and things that people, tell us that they want, and we go champion. So just full picture, full context.
Okay, Michael?
Just to follow up, I don't disagree with anything that's been said. I agree with everything that Mr. Cummings stated, and I didn't mean to implicate you as part of the problem that we've had. Although I do think, to be fair, we appropriated an additional $30 million toward your district at your request in new spending, or at least accelerated spending, even within this calendar year. And I supported that, was glad to support that. But just like household costs are going up, the costs of government are going up. So discussion about keeping the rate the same and providing the same services is just not a possibility, especially within the context of all the other things that we've discussed this morning and that are represented on the board about things that we would like to see. So it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge. It's something we have to work through together. And one of the ways that, and I can't get into the specifics, but when one talks about reprioritization and developing efficiencies, I always try to figure out what exactly does that mean? We have to figure out a way to unpack that a little further. Where are the efficiencies that need to be? And I know that there are some for sure. And I think one of the ways that can be addressed is that, and I'm not going to start naming departments because it's a dangerous game, and a lot of the department directors are here in the room, so
They shut your mic off.
That's what happened. But I don't want to start naming departments, but when you start looking through the organization, there are services that have been delivered for decades after decades after decades, and we've got to figure out, do those services meet the needs that exist in 2025? And I think that's where some of the efficiencies could be. But those are going to be hard choices. We actually experienced one during the last budget cycle, and that was 5 positions, and that was incredibly painful, and has continues to have reverberations through. But I think we need to start. We've got to figure out where those services are and how those services are being delivered and I'll name a few. We're talking about parks, we're talking about rec centers, we're talking about libraries. Those are all programs we value, and yet it's very expensive to do those things. And are they matching our needs in 2025 and beyond? And I think that's how we can identify some efficiencies, or let's call them changes or reprioritizations. But it's not going to be easy. And it could be painful because people rely on those services. They expect those services. They enjoy those services. So continuing to provide them continues to cost more. And if we're going to truly be serious about providing relief, we've got to figure out a way how to do that. And what does it actually mean? That's the part we have to get to.
Stacy?
I'd love to have you come join us on the Process Improvement Commission to flush out these efficiencies, because
There's only one problem. You're on it too? That equals 3. Do the math.
No one says it's easy. No one said,
No.
if it was easy, we would have done it many years ago.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's necessary. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's necessary.
No, and I tell you, I agree with everybody what's going on, but let me say this, once again, in about 6 months or so, we're going to have yet another confrontation with reality. And I'll tell you, once again, we have a lot of factors that are going into this. And, once again, I brought up the unfunded, underfunded mandates that are a big part of it. And if you kind of look at the national scene over years, where with the, Kevin, can you come back up here? Why don't you just grab a chair?
He's so popular.
I believe we got $37 trillion in debt, and the debt service on this is now 6% of GNP, which is larger than the Department of Defense and Medicare, which means, am I accurately saying, that's money not going to goods and services that may come to the realities on why we have to do road and bridge projects and things like that?
Kevin, I think it's also to clarify that the mayor is not talking about the city of Virginia Beach.
I was kidding. Yes.
No, I'm not talking about
Yes.
the city. I'm talking about on the national scene. That, and then the other thing is too, post-COVID, we have had a nation of considerable inflation, which has really cut into disposable of income. And then once again, it was brought up since I became mayor in 2018, that the price of building materials that we use for all these projects gone up 99%. Is that, a pretty accurate, position?
Yes, sir. Last year, whenever I was talking to city council presenting at the CIP retreat, that was a slide that was displayed talking about the producer price index and the change of cost in goods and materials dating back to 2018-19 timeframe, and it has gone up considerably and essentially doubled in the price of those goods and materials.
Okay, thank you. You can sit down. You don't have to grab your chair.
I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah. But let me just say this about that. And that's the dilemma. That's the challenge that we're going to have going forward. Because, something, everything everybody said is correct. And that is, that presents a dilemma. That presents a challenge that we must do. And, but the thing is, I tell you what, if you look at nationally, and I keep on hating, there's a lot of folks all over the place paying a lot more, especially in the northern states and things of that. But I'm not going to use that as an argument. We're talking about our people down here, and Stacy, you're 100% right. But one of the reasons we started process improvement, I guess it was around 15 years ago, is for exactly this. For you to now go in and do a deep dive and really take a critically look. The purpose of process improvement was to take programs and put an outside set of eyes. Form an ad hoc committee, bring in some experts from the outside that take an objective look on how we do business. And that's been a successful model we've been using for a while. And you got some remarkable people on there. And now you have the luxury of time. Back in your rookie days, and you were there just thrown into the budget cauldron. But now that you have the experience and you understand the processes a little bit, by all means, take that deep dive, go in and bring us some back. And I think, that's the way we do it. But until that time, until we have the economic picture at the time of the budget and everything, but the thing is, if you can be laying the foundation for it, give us an objective analysis. Let's see what we can do. Let's get to yes on this, okay?
So, Mr. Mayor, if I were to summarize the conversation you just had and how it relates to a 24-month focused action plan, most of the other ones we're talking about are giving a vision for staff to follow. This one is kind of a dual purpose, where there are things staff should be working on. They'll support the process improvement steering committee and work on efficiencies. That tends to be around the edges and not big enough to solve the problems of money in the magnitude you're talking about. But they'll continue to work on that. They will also, it sounds like, bring ideas and suggestions to the budget retreat and the budget proposal, keeping in mind your big picture that none of you are interested in making government more affordable or expensive for your residents. The other part is on you all. And I heard you say, we need to reprioritize, we need to make the hard decisions. And so some of this is staff can bring you a lot of information, but you're the ones that ultimately have to decide, are we cutting services? Are we raising taxes to support these new services we want to? Are we going to be doing things differently? And so to me, this one feels a little different than the other priorities.
I'll tell you what, budget season is a contact sport. And, once again, all budgets are in a state of transformation and flux depending on time, depending on funding we get from federal, state, and everything. There's a lot of unknowns when you go into budget season. And so I guess we're just have to confront with the reality at the time. And, once again, I think we got kind of a schematic of a plan, but until we get the actual where we are at the time, there's not much we can do now. But I think with Stacy and Josh, with process improvement, go to the outside experts too. Don't be afraid that you can form an ad hoc committee with this thing. Get some of the economists, get the people, look at best practices at other cities, how they're doing it. If there's a path, you can find it. Okay?
Anything else from you? The last one of your priorities that we wanted to just make sure we've got a better understanding of what it looks like for you is this mobility, transit, transportation, trails, neighborhood traffic and safety. Thinking 12 months to 24 months, what are you expecting to see staff working on? How far, how deep, how fast do you want them working to continue on mobility, transit, transportation, traffic, trails?
Anybody?
Are there any enhancements that the council wants to see here that is in our control, right? Because we're doing a lot as it relates to the trail, and working on getting federal funding for that. A lot of the HRT-related items are not necessarily in our control and are cost prohibitive based on some of the things that we've brought to you all previously as well. So is there any enhancements that you all foresee that y'all like us to consider?
Okay, let's go. Amelia, let me ask you first with HRT, and then we'll go to Michael.
Right, concerning HRT, we need to come to a consensus on what they've brought to us. Even though we've sent letters to them, I've noticed another letter has come back. So we need to do a kumbaya on deciding, because of the money of the $130 million. I'm hearing there may be other spots they could use, but we need to come to the table and, discuss that. That's one. They're also bringing up the system optimization plan, where they will have to consolidate certain bus routes. So that is one part we could look at as well. Thank you.
Michael, and then Rosemary. It's all those employees, Michael.
I'm going to bring up something that doesn't cost any money, and that is traffic calming. And we spent a lot of time talking about this so it comes as no surprise to you, but there's a gap between the professional data that measures these things and the perception that people have about their safety in their neighborhoods. And it's also one of the top things that people provide to me. It doesn't matter what neighborhood I go to. Traffic safety is one of their top concerns. And it's kind of challenging for me because on one hand, I completely understand and respect the professional expertise that's being shared with me as a council member by the people who work every day in traffic safety, and I value their judgment and their wisdom and their guidance. But then on the other hand, I also understand the feelings that the experiences that people have had. I just got an email today about a neighborhood where there were parked cars that were hit, and it's dangerous, and the school just started. And we've got to find I don't think we're done yet in traffic calming. We have to find a way to bridge that divide a little bit more carefully. I don't know what that means, but I hope we can make some progress on it and provide something that more than you don't meet the traffic calming program that has been set up. Because that's the answer we give to a lot of people. And it's increasingly not hard to deliver that and unacceptable too.
Good. Rosemary?
I wanted to address the HRT issue. We put that on the agenda so the council could have an opportunity to hear all of that. And Mr. Harrell was able to come forward. So I think we've already heard it. And it's not really our decision, it's the Development Authority's decision. And they actually spoke before the Development Authority again. Now, if the Development Authority wants to hear it again, that's up to them. But I think we've already done that. So I don't think we need to do it again.
Okay. Any response, Amelia?
Well, just what Councilwoman Wilson is mentioning, we have brought it up. I asked you if they could speak, and it did. And I do see another letter that's come forth. But even at that time, the Virginia Beach Development said they were not interested in doing that. They're already advertising that area. But I'm also hearing there may be other spots they could look at. So this is what I'm talking about, doing a kumbaya, sitting to the table, not a presentation so much to the council, but with one or two people with Virginia Beach Development Authority to look at what are suggestions. Because I remember even Lisa said there are options that they would look at, that seemingly that site is already, like Elvis has left the building. So they need to realize that and see what's possibility so that they do not lose the funding that they have.
I think, the goal is to find a path to somehow get to yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Josh?
I was just curious how the Traffic Safety Improvements Fund is doing, just health-wise, and you can answer it later, but just as we were looking at this, a lot of what's on there kind of comes out of that fund. So if it's right-sized.
So this is predominantly currently funded by general fund, and eventually, once the new speed enforcement cameras are coming online for the school zones, that will provide additional revenue. But that's not projected to come online until probably around the beginning of the next new year. Yep. So right now, there's still a good amount of general fund money in there, and the items that the council members request as part of reconciliation, plus the projects that were already programmed, are moving forward based on that funding. But it should see additional plus up once the speed enforcement for school zones revenue starts to come inside the system.
Okay, and just a quick follow-on. I remember getting a CCSR recently saying that we had moved through a lot of the projects that were tied to grants before we could get new grants. So a lot of the sidewalk projects and the sidewalk money that was kind of tied up, those projects are out the door. That's also in good shape, and we're making progress.
Let me look into that and I'll follow up.
Okay, Michael, or Worth, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Just two things on this particular topic, earlier this year, the Resort Advisory Commission, RAC, sent us a letter asking for us to look into microtransit at the resort. We have not responded to that. Just a reminder, we did have the freebie program a couple of years ago. I think the appetite of this body, including myself, was not to extend that past its last expiration because it cost the TIP fund, probably close to $1 million or plus. But that being said, I do ask for us, Mr. City Manager and colleagues, to consider programs, microtransit programs at the resort, not at an extra cost, but to look into, some RFP for freebie and anyone else out there to provide some kind of low-cost microtransit program at the resort. And if it does not cost the TIP fund any money or the general fund any money, let's look at that. But right now, we're not. This is a dead issue with staff because we have not done anything up with this letter of request for microtransit at the resort. Secondly, VB Trail. I think this is what I put on my piece on this, and this is where this last conversation about the cost of government versus spending. We have, I think, maybe 3 of the 5 legs of the VB Trail paid for roughly. We have made some spending decisions on this, 15 to 20 or more $1 million. Is that the right amount of money to spend on VB Trail with government, national, federal government matching programs? I think it's a great program for this city. There are arguments against spending this kind of money for a VB Trail, but does this spending induce better transportation, more efficiency, some development around VB Trail that could produce more taxes? So this is where these decisions, where there's pros and cons of whether you want to spend some more money or not and not have tax increases. So VB Trail, do we want to keep forward? We still have maybe 2 more legs to go, but it's going to come at a cost.
Hutch, and then Amelia.
So this is, Stace. So this is, I wasn't sure we were doing this, so if this is not the time, let me know. One of the things there, some of you know, is, I'm an avid cyclist, and there's a lot, and we're trying to connect the trails. And there's some of us in the directors that, we bike, and we're trying to connect to VB Trail, to Trashmore and different things. And we've talked about some overpasses, some different stuff. But I just wonder if we could get an analysis or some idea of cost. Is like on any of the 4, and I think it's called 4-lane divided highway. That's like Providence Road, right? 2 and median, and 2 is a 4-lane divided. Could we take the right lane of all those lanes, start connecting them with an 18-inch white line that is, you got some bike chevrons in it, so that you start to make it a little more friendly for cyclists to get to places. I'm not talking huge to start with. Just start thinking about that, what it would cost, what would that look like. Literally, is it a dead issue? I just know that a lot of folks think, cyclists should ride on the sidewalk. For one thing, it's illegal. The other is how you get killed, because if you haven't checked, just check yourself. I ask you when you go home today or when you're riding through your neighborhood, where do you stop? Nobody stops before the stop sign. You stop about 3.5 feet past the stop sign. That's the sidewalk area that we're coming off of. So lots of collisions occur that way. So that's really why it's not allowed. The best way is to have the lines on the street. I'm not talking about taking over any streets. I know Norfolk did some of that, and it was very controversial. But just 18 inches, white line, green line, something like that. What that would cost, is it feasible? I don't know. If it fits in there, great. Thanks.
Okay, Amelia?
Yes, I'm going back to Councilman Remick's idea for the microtransit. We have it, the one we have here, we have one over in Newport News, and so forth. It's working well. The problem that I'm looking at is at the resort. Are people willing to pair up like that? A lot of people are used to having their own cars, unless you're looking at the tourists, where, like how Freebie worked, a family of 3 or 4 could get into that. But we had to talk and let them know at the general meetings, one which I go to on Thursday, that Freebie wasn't free. So the name just threw people off. They thought we had it for free, but we were paying. through your funding. So for that area, you need to kind of clarify whether it's something mainly that will help the tourists get around, or it's something that we can use that come all the way to District 9 for that transit. Because a lot of the people who use it in a certain area are not headed all the way down to the ocean front. So there may be a need. The second thing is the VB Trail. Lots of people, little markets, little developments are important because they see people back and forth on that trail. So it could bring up some development, some smaller businesses that people could stop by, like how our cyclist, Hutch, he's good, I don't cycle, but there's an opportunity for some development once that is all through from failure all the way across. I think it's important. Thank you.
Thank you, Cash.
I'll be quick. Thank you. This is about transportation. I am concerned a little bit about are we a 15-minute city in terms of getting to locations? According to our comp plan, are we designed to be a 15-minute city to grocery stores or to the interstate? If that's the case, I'm not sure if we are. And then I was watching someone at a bus station, and it took an hour for the bus to get there. And obviously, they don't have a car. They're going to work so that they can get their own transportation. But we do have to look at transportation. Now, we have a lot of people that drive. We are a very thriving city. And so I'm going to bring it to a close here. I do like HRT for what they do in Norfolk. We've already put a pin in it when it comes to what we talked about at council before, so I'm with you. But I do think that our transportation needs an overhaul. I don't know how best to say it, but that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, let me just close it out here. Yesterday, I had lunch with the mayor of Portsmouth and a representative of one of our major factories. And there was a discussion about the frustration of getting employees to this factory, especially when you got 3 shifts going on. But once again, it's very, very expensive, and we're talking about cutting costs. And then we're talking about the need for transportation, which is a necessity. I'm on the Transportation Planning Organization. I can tell you, every city in the 757 shares the same frustration. How does somebody from Norfolk or Virginia Beach get to the shipyard, in Newport News? And once again, we have, I'll call them barriers to success. We have tunnels. We have bodies of water. We're not in any type of grid system where our roads and highways lend themselves favorably, like New York, Boston, Chicago, to have an effective transit system. Ultimately, as we were talking yesterday, the ultimate goal is to transition to autonomous vehicles where you can pick up an elderly person in a cul-de-sac and get her to the doctor. But that's still a ways away. But once again, there is no real immediate solution now, cost prohibitive.
All right, so our goal this afternoon has been to hear your priorities for the 24-month focused action plan so that staff can move forward with them. We've gone through the top 6. Staff feels like they've got a good sense of the other 6 that are up here. Before I tell you what's next, anyone have something that they wanted to mention on the other 6 that that you haven't already mentioned?
Okay, we're good to go.
Okay, so next steps for the focused action plan, we're meeting with department directors tomorrow. So while it's very fresh, what you all have said, they can start mapping out what they think they can do. There will then be community feedback opportunity for the first 2 weeks of September. And then taking what department directors have done, the community feedback, staff will provide a draft plan to council in mid-October, and then 2 weeks later, have you all have a conversation. So you'll have gotten community input, you'll be able to see a draft plan, have a conversation, and then about 2 weeks after that, staff will provide an updated plan based on your feedback. And at just before Thanksgiving, you will affirm what you see in the 24-month action plan. Staff would then use it for all that infrastructure of we're setting goals, we're checking in, we're having progress reports, and they would share progress reports with you twice a year. So that's the next steps of what's happening with this.
I think the plan has a plan.
The plan has a plan. The planners are good at planning. So that concludes what we originally planned to do today. The mayor wanted me to ask all of you, do you want to have some of the discussion that we were planning for tomorrow morning now? Or are you ready to go home and have the discussion tomorrow? And I'll just preview you when we talk to you all ahead of time, and the manager and his team has been listening to what you wanted to have the additional discussions about. Governance of council was the overarching topic. Some of the ideas were, should we discuss council pay for council members? Are there some council policies for how we operate that we need to review? Street naming and how our process of street naming goes, and e-bikes, and then opening for others. So those were the topics we've heard that you might want to talk about, and checking, save it for tomorrow morning. I saw a vigorous yes tomorrow morning, but it's asking you because you asked me to ask everyone.
The point is that, once again, respecting time, long day, we are finishing ahead of 5:30. We're probably could be here another hour or so. Would it be more prudent to just come in the morning, have an abbreviated session? This was a pretty long day. Michael?
No problem there. I just wonder, are there any of those on that list that we could knock out really quickly? I mean, no? Okay.
What about
It'd be nice if we could. It's just another long day tomorrow.
It's up to the council, but it is you can knock it all out tonight if you want to, or if you do it tomorrow, it's probably an hour or two.
Yeah, it's probably going to take an hour or two, and as the city clerk diligently has pointed out, we have to pay for the breakfast anyway. So look at it this way as an opportunity for more free food. Worth?
So what is the next step? It's a recap of what we
And
just.
then we can have a summary too. Then, just as a capstone, quick overview after the thing. What's your thoughts?
A capstone of what we talked about today?
Yeah. After we do the governance
Right.
tomorrow.
Tomorrow. My intent was to do it before you do the governance, so it's fresh.
Okay, we can do that first.
Yeah, fresh overnight, thinking, oh, I forgot to say, or I want to clear up, but just making sure you're all on the same page. Do that quickly and then have the governance discussion.
Okay, Amelia and Rosemary.
Well, I was looking at the governance, especially because I know I won't be here for past close to 9:30, 10. Before the recap.
You want to do the governance
The governance.
first tomorrow morning and then just recap this? That's fine.
Yeah.
The idea is we'll come tomorrow, we'll figured out what we want to do. Rosemary?
So I asked to speak about the legislative package at the retreat. Is that going to be included in the governance, or when are we supposed to do that?
Yep.
Yep.
Sorry, yeah, that was very formal. Yes, ma'am.
So we'll be talking about that as part of governance.
Is that something where you need staff bringing something to you, or is that a
I
discussion?
think that would be a discussion around the table.
Okay.
Okay, Patrick, anything else?
All good on my end.
Okay. Okay, free breakfast tomorrow, folks.
So continental breakfast starts at 8, we'll start at 8:30, and we will end your session no later than 11:30 tomorrow.
Okay? All right, thank you. I tell you what, that was a great conversation, folks, and thank the staff, and thank you for the people in the gallery that came here. Thank you all. We see you tomorrow.